So good morning. Welcome to the 16th Annual Hurricane Preparedness Expo. We're thrilled to have all of you here with us in person for the first time in 3 years. As you know, the last couple of years we've, due to COVID and health concerns, we've been doing them online, virtually. So before I introduce the mayor to do the grand opening, I want to thank our sponsors for this year's expo and encourage you to visit them at the booths next door while you're here today. So thanks to Samson Tree Service, our title sponsor, Just Shutter It, Generex Generators, Aqua Seekers, Holtz Reliable Garage Door Repair, O'Donnell Impact Windows and Storm Protection, and Storm Tight Windows for being our sponsors for this 16th Annual Hurricane Preparedness Expo. So without further ado, here for our grand opening, I want to introduce the mayor of the city of Port St. Lucie, Mayor Shannon Martin.
Good morning, Port St. Lucie. How's everyone doing today? First, I want to acknowledge that we have Councilman David Pickett here, right here in the front. And I want to also thank our Emergency Operations Director, Billy Weinshank, for being here. He is our go-to man for all things emergency preparedness, and we are very proud to have him as part of our Port St. Lucie team. So I want to thank you all for joining me here today for Port St. Lucie's 16th Annual Hurricane Preparedness Expo. It's great to be back all together, coming out and seeing what everything is going on and preparing for our hurricane preparedness and seeing all the vendor booths that are out there. And so I just want to let you know that every year our city conducts a statistically valid survey of all of our residents in partnership with the National Research Center and a group called PALCO. And I know many of our residents take the threat of hurricanes very, very seriously, and we all should. And I'm proud to say that our annual survey has consistently shown that our residents feel that they are prepared for emergencies like hurricanes or other storm events. And so that's really important because we really strive in the city to make sure that we do everything we can to get our residents prepared and all of you prepared. And so as Floridians, we must be prepared for storms, and thankfully with the help of technology, we are more prepared now than ever before for tropical storms and for hurricanes and other events. Forecasting and the tools for modeling storm surge has improved with technological advances, and while the improvements that have been made are very important, we must continue to be very diligent in our efforts because we all know that we can't control Mother Nature. And so these potential threats are why preparedness is so vital to all of you and to us and to our entire community. And so let me share some of the highlights that you can expect today at the Expo. Right here in this room, there's going to be incredible presentations featuring panel discussions on how to get ready for a storm and an emergency managers panel, followed by the raffle drawings that we're going to have. There's going to be 5. So make sure you got your ticket, and if you haven't gotten one, please get one. You can win a 6,250 watt Champion dual fuel portable generator. And then right outside this room, you're going to find 38 preparedness exhibitors from local, state, and federal governments, along with local businesses, where you can get storm-related information. And again, thank you to our sponsors and our title sponsor, especially Samson Tree, for having this here today. There are also some fun activities. There'll be a scavenger hunt, an interactive photo booth, and our emergency vehicles are on display from the American Red Cross, the St. Lucie County Fire District, and the Salvation Army. And so I encourage everyone to check out www.cityofpsl.com/hurricane, and you're going to find lots of preparedness information for your family, how to build that emergency supply kit, and what to do when disaster might strike. I also want to take this time and take a moment to thank all of our hardworking public servants who truly help Port St. Lucie prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergencies. We can easily take them for granted and not realize how important they really are. But when that disaster does strike, we always depend on them and look for their guidance and support. And please know that in an event of an impending storm, our emergency operations team, again led by Billy Weinshank, meets regularly with county and state officials and members of the National Hurricane Center to ensure that our city is prepared. Once a storm is approaching, our operations team activates, and it becomes an all-hands-on-deck approach to addressing all storm-related issues before, during, and especially after. And this is made up of members of all of our city departments. Public Works, Parks and Rec, Police, Utilities, all of our city departments, that's just a few, come together and make sure that all the teams in all the departments are doing everything they can to be ready for a storm. It's also important to know that our communications team will be working diligently to get important updates, real-time information out to all of our residents. And our emergency operations team doesn't just meet when a storm strikes. Our teams are meeting and practicing throughout the year to guarantee that they are ready for anything that comes our way. And so it's important to remember that these steps taken by all of our teams, our residents, our community partners are really the key towards the preparedness for any extreme weather event. And I want to thank you all again for joining us and working together to help Port St. Lucie prepare for this year's hurricane season. Thank you all very much, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
So now I want to introduce to you WPBF Channel 25 First Warning Weather Team, severe weather expert meteorologist Mike Lyons, and looks like Sandra Shaw, and I know, and Chris Martinez is manning the booth, is what I was just told. He's at the booth, so we've got Mike and Sandra here.
Thank you, Shane. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. Yeah, Chris is in the booth. Vanessa is on her way up. Vanessa Vanette.
She did the morning show today. So if you watch this morning at 8, she's just getting off the air at 9, so she's on her way up.
And Brooke is working tonight, and Glenn is on a cruise, I'm told, right?
I think he may be. I think it was a rescheduled cruise from COVID, so
I think
he's
it's a
took full advantage.
A Disney cruise. And if you're going to go on a cruise or go on a vacation during hurricane season, this is the time to do it.
Yes.
Because the hurricane season, as you guys all know, is long. It goes on seemingly forever. It starts on June 1st, runs all the way through the end of November. But the peak months are still ahead of us. So that's why this event at this time is such a great time. It was rescheduled, as you know, from early June because we had that little tropical threat. I mean, it's been such an interesting hurricane season so far. We've had 3 storms.
Yes.
We had Khalid develop just like that last week. We were tracking Bonnie seemingly forever, and Bonnie finally dissipated earlier today. It was a hurricane in the Eastern Pacific. We had Hurricane Agatha in the Eastern Pacific. It went across Mexico, got into the Gulf of Mexico, and actually became Tropical Storm Alex once it was east of us. So it's been kind of topsy-turvy with storms going from one basin to another. But my point about the length of the hurricane season and how this event is so important is because August, September, and October, those are the busy months. That's when we expect storms to pop. August, September, and October by far. And September is the most active month of the entire hurricane season. When you look at September all by itself, there are more hurricanes in the month of September than all the other months combined. And as you know, we expect this hurricane season to be quite active. Right, Sandra?
We do, and on the heels of all that, we've been doing some special in-depth reports. I don't know if you saw our hurricane special that aired, but it was a 1-hour sort of dive into everything hurricane, everything what you need to do to prepare, and some of the history. And so that's still available on our website that you can check out. It's really a great resource. I just went to the Bahamas to do a follow-up on Hurricane Dorian, which was the worst hurricane with 185-mile-an-hour winds, the strongest ever recorded in the Atlantic Basin. And I talked to survivors who actually stayed there in the midst of a Category 5 on the Abacos, which is right where it hit. What they said with still post-traumatic stress is, you don't ever want to go through that. It was a nightmare. You don't want to ever put yourself in that kind of situation. These people were lucky to be alive. Now, they were in a different situation. They're way out there. It would have been hard for them to evacuate anyway. But there was a 20-foot storm surge that went over Marsh Harbor. When we flew in, instead of trees, you just see the sticks standing up. Still, this is 3 years later. It was exacerbated because of COVID. But I mean, it's just a testament to the fact that sometimes we get kind of inured, we get kind of bored because we hear these warnings. You know, even the one where we rescheduled this, it was a lot of rain. It wasn't terrible, but you know, you just never know. And I think the thing is, when you see something like that, you know why we do what we do. It is human life, you know, and we are not going to exaggerate something. We're going to give you the facts. We're going to tell you what the criteria is. But if we're talking about a major hurricane, which has the potential to hit here, they all have different characteristics. Some of it can be flooding, some of it can be, you know, storm surge. We have been so lucky the years that I have been here with Mike. We have come this close so many times. And you just never know. And it's not that we want to sell fear, but we want to sell life, you know. We want to work together. We want to be prepared. And I think, you know, if you can be prepared, then you're going to have a strategy if the worst should happen. And you can also help your neighbor out too, who maybe doesn't have that strategy. So I think it's great that you guys are here. It means that you're leaders and you're taking the bull by the horns. So here we go.
And I would also just add what Sandra said in talking about Hurricane Dorian. If you were here in 2019, you remember how close we came to having that hurricane here, because here was this Category 5 hurricane, one of the largest hurricanes we've ever seen in terms of size, and its intensity was quite remarkable, 185-mile-per-hour winds, and it sat in the Bahamas. It sat there
36 hours.
for 36 straight hours. It didn't move.
If it had moved, it would have hit us.
Yeah.
This is so weird though. If it hadn't stalled over the Bahamas, it was going to hit us. I mean, that's actually what saved us, was the fact that it stayed over the Bahamas.
You'll recall, if you were here at the time, that the forecast from the Hurricane Center called for that storm to move right into Palm Beach County and parts of the Treasure Coast. And safe to say that if we had got hit by a major hurricane like that, we would still be picking up the pieces. Sandra's right. We don't hype the storm. We just give you the facts so that you can take whatever actions you deem are necessary. And that's why, again, it's important now that you figure out what you're going to do. If you've been through a hurricane, you probably know what you're going to do, and you probably know what you're not going to do. You've learned from your past lessons. But it's important to point out, and it's important to remember, that every hurricane is different.
Yeah.
And just because you went through one hurricane doesn't mean the conditions are going to be the same. Hurricane Andrew, for example, a storm that hit in August of 1992, the 30-year anniversary is coming up. That was a wind event. That produced winds that were more like a tornado than a hurricane, and the wind damage there was horrific. But other hurricanes can be water producers. And now, as we look at the damage that a hurricane can produce and the loss of life that a hurricane can produce, 90% of the people who die from a tropical storm or hurricane is because of water and freshwater flooding. One of the stories I'm working on right now for our next Forecasting the Future story is about how a study of the 2020 hurricane season, a hurricane season that had 30 storms and 14 hurricanes, they found that hurricanes, because of changes in the climate, are now producing more water.
Yeah.
That's problematic in a big, big way. You get a storm right on top of Port St. Lucie, you're going to have a ton of rain. Got a lot of concrete here, a lot of roads here. That's going to be just exacerbate the flooding threat here in the area. So the bottom line is, as we head toward the peak of hurricane season, August, September, and October, let me thank the city of Port St. Lucie for putting this on. This is a great event. They've done it for a number of years. And the primary reason is to make sure that you are safe and that you know what to do. Knowledge, as they say, is power. And this great event today is an opportunity for you to talk to hurricane experts like the emergency management folks here in St. Lucie County, in the city of Port St. Lucie. They can answer your specific questions. I live here, for example. What's my threat from wind? What's my threat from water? Those are the kind of questions you want answered. If you're new to Port St. Lucie, it's even more important that you get those questions answered today. We have a booth. We'll be happy to answer all of your questions. Chris and Vanessa, I'm guessing, are there right now. We will be there momentarily. We would love to talk to you and meet with you because, again, as we approach hurricane season, our number one priority is your safety. That's what we talk about on television all the time. We want you to get the information, we want you to be prepared, and we want you to know what to do. Hurricanes can be big, hurricanes can be really scary, but once you have that knowledge, once you're powered with that information, then you can take that information and you can apply it and know exactly what to do. Get my supplies. Am I going to stay? I'm going to go. If I'm leaving, how far do I have to go? In most cases, not very far at all. So these are all the kind of questions that you can get answered today here at this event. And Sandra and I are just so happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you get that information, share it with your neighbors. You know, share it with everybody else who couldn't be here, because you can be the leader, and who knows, you could really be credited with, you know, you could help save a lot of people in your neighborhood or whatever. And just take what you know and say, hey, I'm going to do this for my neighbor. I'm going to do it for myself. And we're going to be well equipped here in Port St. Lucie. So thank you guys. We'll see you at the booth.
Yep, thanks very much. Again, thank you again to the city for sponsoring this, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you, Shane. Okay.
All right, does anyone have any questions? They've still got a few minutes left in this session, so if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll run over to you with the mic, and you can ask, and they can answer. I can't jump like I used to.
Thank you so much. I am new to St. Lucie, and I live in Kings Isle, where we have a number of small lakes. And I do have a question regarding water that you just spoke about. With the amount of rain that is produced by hurricanes, the small lakes that we have here, what is the danger of those small lakes flooding?
Well, I think that would be a question for Shane, or perhaps the Emergency Management Director for the City of Port St. Lucie, more than me. But I can say this before they give the specific answer. Tropical systems can be prolific rain producers, and it is directly tied how much rain falls to their forward speed. So if you get a storm that slows down or is moving slowly, or worst case scenario actually stalls, you're going to get a tremendous amount of rain. And it doesn't have to be a big, powerful hurricane to produce a ton of rain. We've had a number of tropical storms, even depressions. You know, when you look at the scale, you have a disturbance, then you have an organized system called a depression, then the winds get about 39 miles per hour, and we give it a name, it's a tropical storm, and then winds get to 74, it's a hurricane. But there was a depression, just a weak system, winds about 35 miles per hour, called Claudette. It made landfall near Houston, Texas in 1979 and produced 42 inches of rain in 24 hours. So even a weak system can produce a lot of rain. That's why tropical systems should never be underestimated. But in terms of a specific question like that, I would refer to the experts here.
Yeah, when you're talking about the small lakes, like it's a HOA community, a Kings Isle. Those are maintained by the homeowners association. They actually have ways that they can drain them down if they were to be getting up to overflowing, to be able to drain them down. And obviously, if you're new to Florida, you've seen the canals everywhere. You see these big canals that we have. That's how everything gets flushed out of the city and back to the ocean where it belongs, is through the canal system. They actually have giant pumps which will pump the water, and I mean, when they're drawing them down as a hurricane's approaching, they draw them down to the really low. You'll actually see, you could surf on that water. It's moving so fast. That's how fast it's draining those things out to the ocean, and that allows for whenever all these small lakes in the HOAs, plus the rainfall that comes from the sky that naturally goes to the storm system and to the canals, it has somewhere to go, and then they can, you know, turn them back on and keep pumping to keep it down to minimize the amount of flooding, which is why you don't see, knock on wood, you don't see very often a lot of houses getting flooded. Streets get flooded all the time. That's what they're designed for. So when you see water in the street, that's how you notice your house is like up here and the street's down there. That's how we design stuff in Florida, because it's flat and it's sandy and it doesn't drain very well, right? When you get a lot of rain, it is intended to go into the storm sewer, even if it sits in the road for a couple of hours while it's draining into the storm sewer, then to the nearest canal, then to the nearest connector canal, and then out to the ocean.
And I would pose a question to you that you need to get answered today. Are you prepared for hurricane season? As we head toward the peak of the season in August, is your home ready? Are you going to stay in that home? If so, do you have the supplies necessary? Those are some questions you need to get answered today.
Correct. You know, are you going to evacuate? If so, where are you going to go? You don't need to go to Georgia or Tennessee. As a matter of fact, the worst thing you can do is be stuck out on the interstate because everybody's trying to go to Georgia or Tennessee
100%.
when you could have went 12 miles inland to a neighbor or to a friend's house that you know that has a real, sturdy concrete house with a good roof on it and been just as good as getting stuck on the interstate trying to go to another state.
Yeah, let me just say something. Because of Hurricane Andrew, the 30th anniversary coming up in August, that changed everything in terms of how we prepare for hurricanes in South Florida from an emergency management standpoint to building codes. So homes now, especially those built after the new statewide building code went into effect in 2001, are much better able to withstand the high winds of a hurricane. I mean, impact windows. We didn't have impact windows back in the early 1990s. People didn't put up storm shutters. They put up wood or whatever. But now homes that were built after 2001 are much better prepared. We're one of the best prepared states in the country when it comes to wind. But again, the other issue is rainfall and the potential flooding that we can see, and we're seeing more and more of that. This study that came out on the 2020 hurricane season, again, found that those tropical systems produced anywhere from 8 to 10% more water because of changes in the climate.
Right. And one interesting thing that I learned when I went to the Bahamas when it relates to Dorian, the people who were on Man-O-War Key, which was where I interviewed the survivors, if they had moved, 10 miles south to Marsh Harbor, that's where the storm surge hit. And they likely would not have made it. So that's why it's so critical to listen to the specificity of the forecast and exactly where we're predicting where the storm surge will be, how much, if you live in a floodplain, if we're gonna get a stalled out, storm that stays over, how much rain you're gonna get. The specifics of the forecast are really critical. And we answer a lot of those questions on our Facebook Live. Operations we put into effect. It's on your Facebook page. We're just live and we're updating real time. And then if you have a specific question, we can kind of micro forecast for you for the most part to the best of our ability, because it really is, it hits differently in different areas, and it depends on the positioning of the storm, and it depends on the timing, and there's so many things that go into it. So that's why we do county by county, and then within the county we do specifics as well too. So.
All right, I think we have time for one more question before we draw for the first prize.
Yeah, my question is, him and I live in a community with all double-wide mobile homes. I'd like to know, how would I know when the right time for me to leave that mobile home? Because I know some hurricanes are not as bad as others. From what I understand, my mobile homes have been up there since the 80s, and they've survived all the hurricanes as far as maybe carports went. But how would I know when to leave my mobile home and to be safe?
Well, that's obviously a personal decision that you and your family, you have to make. But you can watch our broadcasts. You can watch our Facebook Lives, as Sandra said, and also go to our website or our app, and we'll have all the timing. One of the keys that we'll show you often is when we expect the winds to increase in specific areas. And the forecasts from the National Hurricane Center have gotten so good in recent years. We show, when we're in our hurricane coverage, we show you the computer modeling and things like that, the Euro, the GFS, all these fancy names for these computer models, which are quite remarkable, that try to simulate the environment of the Earth. But the forecasters at the Hurricane Center are the best in the world. They outdo those computer models every day. Last year, they were remarkably accurate. Hurricane Ida, for example, might have been the most remarkable hurricane forecast in history. The very first advisory, Dan Brown, the hurricane specialist on duty, in his forecast said this storm is going to become a major hurricane. This storm is going to go through rapid intensification. In other words, it goes from a tropical storm to a hurricane really quickly. And he said it's going to make landfall right here. He was off by 5 miles on a 5-day forecast. It was an incredible forecast. So not every forecast is going to be right on the money. But the bottom line is the folks at the National Hurricane Center do a tremendous job. Our job in broadcasting is to let you know when you can expect those winds, to give you plenty of advance notice so that you can make a good decision, a smart decision for you and your family. Again, our priority is your safety, so we want to make sure you have that information well in advance. And we can say, for example, Sandra will be on, I'll be on, and we'll say, hey, in Port St. Lucie, you can expect those tropical storm force winds, winds over 40 at, say, 5 in the morning. And then the winds will increase by 11 o'clock, increase even more by 1. We have specific graphics. You know, when it's sunny and 72 degrees in January, February, and March, we're not just sitting around twiddling our thumbs and going to the beach. We're working on hurricane graphics because a hurricane for everybody, emergency management, and at the TV station, it's the Super Bowl. It doesn't get any bigger than that. These big weather events are what we live for, and we want to make sure that you have all that great information so, again, you can make the smart choice for you. So I would suggest, obviously, watch. We'll give you that information, but that's a decision that you have to make and something you need to think about now, because obviously you're going to have to leave, and it's like, where are you going to go? And you don't want to go too far. Shane said, you don't want to go to Georgia. Don't get stuck in a car. If you have family or friends 10 miles inland, that'll be a much better choice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. So again, I'm Shane Ratliff with the City of Port St. Lucie's Office of Emergency Management, and I'm going to introduce to you today our next presenters. They will be talking about, I will be leading the questions, and I've got a whole bunch of questions here for them. And then, depending on how much time we have at the end, we'll ask you all if you have any questions to talk or to ask them as well. So first of all, I've got Kurt Meyer. Kurt, raise your hand there. Kurt Meyer is from the St. Lucie County Department of Public Safety, Radiological Division, and Wesley Armstrong, who is with the City of Port St. Lucie Neighborhood Services Department. And the forum for this panel is I'll be leading the questions. Some questions will be directed to both of you, and some of them will be just for one of you. And if you submitted, you as the audience, if you submitted your questions via email when we put out the thing before the first time we were going to have the Hurricane Expo, we asked for people to submit questions to ask of the various panels that we had today. So we've incorporated those questions into one of the two panels today, depending on which one it most fit with the people answering it was. And if you have a question in the audience related to the topics discussed, we'll let you ask those on the end. So Kurt, Wes, are you ready?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. So first question, this is for both of you. Can you both explain what your positions are within your organizations?
My position with St. Lucie County Public Safety is actual Senior Radiological Coordinator. With the Radiological Coordinator position, we have several different programs that we take care of besides the power plant coordination, and that is Special Needs Program and the Alert St. Lucie program that we have.
Okay, Wes?
All right. I work for Neighborhood Services. I'm one of the code compliance supervisors for the City of Port St. Lucie. So we oversee property inspections and enforce city ordinances throughout the city.
All right, so that kind of what you do leads us into our second question. Wes, after a tropical storm or hurricane, residents may have the urge to leave their storm shutters up for the rest of hurricane season. I know I'm one of them. What is the danger that comes along with doing this?
So the danger, there's two. The first one being fire safety. The worst thing you can have on your house during a fire are storm shutters. The fire department will actually ventilate fire throughout a house to control it so it doesn't spread to other parts of your home or neighboring properties and cause more damage. The biggest issue, most people tend to leave them on their garage because, you know, there's no one in your garage, you're not living there. However, the electrical panels and hot water heaters tend to be in there, and that's where fires tend to start. So it can cause a lot of problems that way. The second one being ingress and egress to allow emergency services to actually enter your home. People will surprisingly, during hurricane season, use an electric garage door to enter and exit their home because their front door is actually shuttered. So you slip and fall, you call 911, they're not getting into your house. They're going to have to cut your front door literally off, the shutters off of it. So that's another, it's just a life safety issue when it comes to your protection.
And then I'll add to that, as someone, I was a firefighter for 25 years in Kentucky before I moved to Florida. And as far as the egress goes, if you're asleep in your bedroom and the fire's in the hallway outside your bedroom, you're not getting out your door. What are you getting out of? Your window. If it's shuttered, you're not getting out your window. And unfortunately, it'll take so much time for the fire department to try to cut those metal shutters off your window that you will probably not make it due to smoke inhalation, if not the fire itself, before they're able to do so. So it's very important to make sure that you take those shutters down after
Absolutely.
the storm.
2 years ago, we had an incident in the city where the back sliders were completely shuttered. The residents got out, but their dogs did not, and the fire department couldn't get them out in time because the back of the fire was in the front of their home, and the back of their home was fully shuttered, and they couldn't remove it safely in time to get 2 dogs out who died in the fire.
Okay, and then a follow-up to that, Wes, what's the ordinance in the city for how long people can leave their shutters up?
So the ordinance is section 4110M3 during hurricane season, which is June 1st to November 30th. The only time you can have shutters on an occupied home, so you're living in your house, is 48 hours prior to a hurricane, 14 days after a hurricane, or for any residential property if it's unoccupied. So if you're a snowbird, you can shutter your home as long as no one's living in it through that entire time. However, in hurricane season, it's only 48 hours before or 14 days after a named storm event.
Great, thank you for that, Wes. Kurt, the next one's for you.
All right.
I'll give you the softball question first. Can you explain to us what Alert St. Lucie is and what does it do?
Okay, so Alert St. Lucie is a web design or platform that St. Lucie County uses. It's actually powered by Everbridge. The state DEM, Division of Emergency Management, actually pays for that, so the whole state of Florida can actually, so the whole state of Florida can, for the counties, access this program and then they name it whatever it is. So like here it's Alert St. Lucie, Martin, it might be Martin Alert. So we use that. Anybody can use that to sign up for weather alerts of any type, but just strongly caution that you make sure that you open up the category so you specifically pick what you want to receive in notifications. And you could set up any type of devices. You can put your cell phones, home phones, emails. You put your cell phone down for a text message if you want. The only thing is also when you receive the message, confirm the message. Because if you have more than one device, it's going to go to the next device and to the next device until somebody actually confirms it or they went through all your devices that you signed up for. Not only does it do weather alerts, we put out other public safety messages, such as boil water notices, any other types of like points of distribution post-storm. So if we get devastated, we need to put out food and water for different areas of the county. We'll be putting that message out. Of course, the news media will also be putting that information out, but we're going to put that out so you individually can get it and get there and get your supplies if you need them.
And I will attest to what Kurt's saying about making sure you confirm it, because if you're like me and I have it coming to 2 email addresses, 2 cell phones, and a landline in my office, and the office is the first one it hits because that way if I'm there between normal business hours, if you don't confirm it, it will do every one of them, and then. And if you're in a meeting or something, yeah, you really want to confirm it, because if not, then every other device you've got is going to go off too. So it's really good about as much as you add to it, as many ways as you can let it notify you, the better off you are, but you want to confirm it as soon as you get it. That way it doesn't keep harassing you.
Yeah, that's our biggest complaint from people is that the biggest complaint is that they keep getting inundated with these messages, and I have to explain to them that they need to confirm it, or they just get upset and say, just get me out of it. But to me, it's a very important tool to have to get those weather events, notifications, and any other safety information. I know some of the cities and sheriff's office also uses it for criminal notifications as well. So.
And yeah, like you said, there's so many categories that you can pick for it to notify you about. And so I would caution you not to just click the check all, because, I mean, you'll get freeze warnings, frost advisories, if we ever have one. You'll get, I mean, about anything the National Weather Service puts out, you will get. So in June, when there's a severe thunderstorm every single day, you're going to get, all your devices are going to get that severe thunderstorm warning, and you're like, duh, the sky's black. I mean, of course it's a severe thunderstorm coming. So I purposely don't put, severe thunderstorms. I go tornadoes, anything has to do with tornado, anything's going to kill me right away, I want to make sure I know about that. So that's the ones that I check, so that I don't get, and it's very versatile. I mean, it's a great program. If you haven't signed up for it, stlucie.co/alert will take you straight to the
stlucieco.gov.
Oh, stlucieco.gov/alert. I'm sorry. So St. Lucie CO, which means county.gov/alert, will take you right to it.
And one other point, when you do that website, it will redirect you to the Everbridge website, but it will show you that it's St. Lucie County. I just want to make sure that, because some people get confused when they get on the website, and it takes you to the St. Lucie County's website, but then it shows it's redirecting. It's not a spam or anything like that. It's just, we want to take you to their site so you can actually sign up a little quicker.
It's for when we do like outreach presentations like we're doing right now. If I had to tell you the Everbridge site, none of you would remember it. None of you would be able to write it down, because it's like everbridge.com/member/ and it's like 14 numbers.
And characters.
And so I would never be able to say it. So we say stlucieco.gov/alert, which is easy to remember, and it redirects you to that Everbridge site so you can sign up. All right, Wes, can you explain the dangers of generators before, during, and after a storm?
So generators do pose several dangers, the first being carbon monoxide. So you run a generator, you want to make sure you're running it outside in an area that's well ventilated, not next to anything that's open, no open doors, open windows, anything like that. People will try and run them out of their garage. Carbon monoxide is odorless and colorless. You don't know what's happening until it's too late. So you want to make sure to keep that in a well ventilated area. You want to make sure your CO alarms in your house prior to hurricane season are working. Test the batteries on them, replace them if needed. The next one being fire. So when you're going to refuel, make sure it's completely turned off and cool. Leave it off for a while. As people refuel, fuel spills. It hits an area that's hot, catches fire. Now you're holding a gas can over fire. It's not good. Store the gas in a proper container as well, safely. Make sure it's not next to the generator, or anything else for that matter is stored next to the generator. When it comes to fire safety, the third being electrocution. So you want to make sure not to plug too many items into your generator. Follow the safety manual for the generator itself. You need to make sure you do not plug the generator into your home. That will happen sometimes. That poses a electrical safety issue for utility workers and even your neighbors if you backflow the electricity into your home. So you want to make sure not to do that. Plug devices directly into the generator. Make sure your extension cords are not frayed and plugged in properly as well. And test your generators. A lot of them will require oil changes, things like that, proper maintenance per the generator manual as well.
And as a survivor of carbon monoxide poisoning when I was 13 years old, I can tell you that what he said about being odorless, colorless, you don't even know that you're breathing it in, is exactly right. I mean, I was on a bus on a school trip, and the exhaust pipe about the middle of the bus had a giant hole in it, and so it was filling the back half of the bus with carbon monoxide the entire trip. And about 2 hours into it, I lost consciousness, they say, and just fell straight out of my seat into the floor, and I didn't wake up until I was outside of the bus, and then I'd been out of the bus for like 5 minutes before I got enough oxygen to come back to, and I didn't even know it. I mean, I didn't smell anything. I'm sitting there talking with my friends, and all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, I feel kind of funny, but I had no idea what kind of funny I felt. It was just like, ooh, I feel funny. And then that's the last thing I said is, ooh, I feel funny. And then I was completely out. So yes, make sure you don't fool around with putting like generators, grills, anything like that inside a garage or inside the house. You know, make sure they're far away.
Even a back porch that's under an overhang, don't do it. It will ventilate into your home. It might go through soffits or through, again, open windows. If you don't have power after a hurricane because you're running your generator, everything's going to be open. So you do have to make sure that nothing is ventilating into your home. Even, again, if you have a fan on or a window open, it will still get you.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful with that.
And the worst part of it is by the time you realize something's wrong with you, you can't do anything about it because you can't move anymore. All your muscles stop working. So you can't stand up. You can't get yourself out of it. So at that point, it was too late. Thank God there were people in the front of the bus who said, ooh, let's drag Shane off the bus. I don't know why they thought to do that, but they did. And then everybody else started passing out because they were sitting on the bus and they realized, okay, let's get everybody off the bus. All right, Kurt, next question. And this is a 5.5 part question.
All right.
Now, can you explain to us what a special needs shelter is, and then I'll ask you all the parts after you give me that.
So a special needs shelter is it's used for a last resort. Special needs client or registrant would be somebody that's oxygen independent, needs electricity to survive, like CPAP supply machines. You need to have those plugged in so you can get the proper airflow to your lungs. Somebody that's have mobility issues, such as walkers, wheelchairs, or even folks that are bedbound. The special needs shelter is used for those types of people, but it's definitely for a last resort. Those clients will be on a cot, and their caregiver will be on a metal chair, not those nice comfy ones you're sitting in now. They're just metal chairs. We want it to be a last resort, so that way if they can find family and friends, I believe that they're going to be more comfortable in those houses than with a group of 600 other special needs clients sitting on a cot or laying on a cot going to bed.
Exactly. And where is the primary special needs shelter in the county?
Okay, so the primary special needs shelter in our county for St. Lucie is at the Havert L. Event Center, which is 2000 Virginia Avenue in Fort Pierce. That's the only one that we have, and we can hold up to 600 plus clients, and that's counting one caregiver and the many staff that the health department has over there to assist.
And if there were to be an inundation, you had 800. Let's say you had 800 show up. Is there some kind of contract in place for a secondary shelter?
There is a place for that. That's at the Port St. Lucie Community Center, and I really don't know the address, but I know it's across from the Port St. Lucie PD, the city buildings.
Across from the City Hall complex on
There you
Eroso.
go.
But do not go there first.
No.
It will not be open unless the Fin Center is at maximum capacity.
Correct.
Just because it's much harder to get enough staff to staff 2 of them than it is to staff 1. So all the staff will be at the 1 unless they have to do a 2, and then they'll be calling in staff from all over the place
Right.
to come in to staff the second
Yeah,
one.
we'll have to get with the state to get extra people
To
to
get
assist with
nurses and that kind of
second.
stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so what can you bring to the shelter?
What can you bring to the shelter? You definitely want to bring something that will occupy your time, but don't disturb the others. Cards, book to read, a video or something you can put your headphones on. You want to make sure that you bring all of your prescription bottles, so that way if you forget how many pills you're supposed to take that day and what kind of pill it is, you have those bottles already. Plus, if you have those bottles and you run out during that time, the health department can make arrangements to get more medication for you, at least until that event is over with. But they're going to need that prescription bottle. You want to make sure that you bring some extra food that's for your dietary needs. I mean, we will have food available, but stuff does happen, and something may happen at the facility and they won't be able to cook any food. So at least if you have some type of food for your dietary needs, you'll be able to eat. They should have water, but on the side of caution, always bring, a gallon per person per day. We expect at least minimum of 3 days.
All right. Can you bring your pets with you to the shelter?
Okay, no pets are allowed in the special needs shelter. Service animals are allowed. So if you do have foo-foo that, I know they're dear to you. I know I had one that passed away quite a few years ago, and that dog was my child. The problem is we can't have regular animals or regular pets in the center. They're not equipped with it. There is pet-friendly shelters. Westwood is one of them. You just have to pre-register. There's an online registration in the counties. If you do St. Lucie County EOC, you Google that, you can go through our website and find the pet-friendly shelters for the registration. Or you can get with your veterinarian. Sometimes they will also house your animal. And then they would be taken care of because that's who you take them to take care of your animal anyhow, or your loved one.
When can I apply for the special needs shelter? If I'm one of the people in the audience and I need it, when can I apply for it?
You can apply at any time. It's an online registration. It's at the stlucieco.gov/special needs. Don't put a space in it. It's all one word for special needs. And then that will redirect you to the Everbridge website to register for special needs. You'll have to create a username and password. You'll need to remember that username and password. So if you go to booth number 2 over there, I have some postcards. You can actually put that information on and put it on your refrigerator because you want to be able to update annually. So, or whenever there's any changes. So this week, I'm not in a wheelchair. Something may happen to me. Now I'm in a wheelchair, so now I have to update my special needs registration to say that I'm in a wheelchair so that way the health department can help accommodate you. So we ask everybody to update their information annually, but you can register at any time.
All right.
And it's important that you pre-register so that way the health department has an idea of how many people are actually going to show up, so they can make sure that if they have to call the state to get extra nurses to come down.
Thank you. And you answered 2 of the questions, so now we just have one more left.
All right.
Okay, so now I'm signed up, for special needs shelter, but I can't drive. I either don't have a car or I'm special need and I physically can't drive a car. How do I get to the shelter?
Okay, so there is a spot in the registration. So if you do not have transportation of any sort, you can select that you need medical attention and transportation, and a company called MV Transportation will be notifying you 3 days prior to the storm that we're going to come pick you up, or actually ask you if you still need a ride, because you might have gotten hooked up with a friend or a family member that's going to pick you up and take you to their home. So then they just ask if you still need a ride. They'll take that information. If you still do need a ride, they'll call back again and say, hey, listen, we know we're going to pick you up around Friday, but we'll call you back again from a window time frame. So then they'll give you a third call to let you know what window time frame they'll be able to get there to pick you up. You just need to make sure that all your stuff that you're going to take to the shelter is at the doorway. So if you're on a concentrator, and I know some of those are heavy, but some of them do have wheels, try to push that over to the front door so that way it can also be transported with you, or any oxygen bottles as well. Make sure you bring those. The MV Transportation will accommodate and store those to take you over to the special needs shelter.
Okay, great. Thank you. So before we open up the floor for questions, I want to ask both of you, can you share with us one preparedness tip that you would like for everyone in this room to know?
For storm shutters, the best thing to do is at the start of the season, which was last month, double check everything, all your fittings on your home. If you have storm shutters that, the metal ones with wing nuts, you have enough of them. If you're going to try and obtain that 2 days before a hurricane, you're not going to find them. You go to Home Depot, plywood's going to be gone, Tapcons are going to be sold out. So make sure you're prepared that if you have accordion shutters, double check that they can close. You know, the night before a hurricane hits and they're rusted shut, you might not be able to shut those. So it's always good just to double check everything, that everything's secure, so when you do need it, it's in place for you.
Thank you, Wes. Kurt?
One of the tips that I'll have is make sure that if you do evacuate your home, or even if you don't evacuate your home, put all of your emergency information documents in a plastic bag. So that way, one, they will never get wet. And if you're at the house and something, God forbid, knock on wood, the roof comes off your house and now you're getting rain inside your house and you didn't have those important documentation in a sealed Ziploc or something, they're going to get wet and destroyed, and you're going to have to go down to the Social Security office, go get your Social Security card, go get your driver's license or whatever else it may be that you need. And you will definitely need to bring your identification when you come to the special needs shelter. But definitely cover up those important documents, your marriage license, stuff like that. I mean, unless you don't want to be really married to her again.
Insurance documents, that's another important
Yes,
one. Keep your
insurance,
insur-
thank
because
you.
if your home gets damaged, you know, I mean, there's more than you that has State Farm or Allstate.
Right.
There's going to be adjusters everywhere, and if you can't, you know, prove to them that you're their client, they might not be so willing to help.
Correct.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions for our presenters?
Oh,
Huh?
good.
Come
None.
on,
Let's
don't be
go.
shy.
Oh.
There you go.
I had heard that you should shut the power, you know, your circuit box off if you're going to leave. Is that true?
For
the
if you're going to
house.
leave like during a hurricane or?
No, like if you leave the house, should you turn the power off to the house?
Like if you're going to, like let's say a snowbird and you're going to leave for the season?
No, if for the hurricane,
Oh, just for a hurricane in general?
if you're going to evacuate.
Yeah, you can. I don't think it's a requirement or anything in terms of that.
Just in
But if you
case
just want to
the-
be safe in case.
Just so you don't have a fire.
Yeah, and then in the event you're hit by a, you know, unplug everything if you want to go that route. But I mean, your refrigerator is going to be not powered and
Right,
you know, and
right.
things like that. So you want to make sure at least to, you know, take preparations when it comes to that, or you're going to come back to not a great smell.
And your home insurance covers that. If your refrigerator and freezer, everything spoils in it, there's a certain amount depending on,
They will
that
cover,
covers replacing
yeah,
that.
the
I
food.
think it's up to $250 on most policies. Here you go, sir.
Okay, I'm new to Florida. I'm from New York, and I don't know what to do if a hurricane comes. You know, what do I do? Hide my bathtub or something? How do I know when I'm supposed to evacuate?
So you want to make sure you have, your home is protected. You have everything in place in terms of your shutters, like Kurt was saying, important documents, things like that you want to bring with you. If, you know, it depends on the home. If your home has been there for 40, 50 years, it's gone through a couple of hurricanes. However, we get a Category 5 off the coast. I don't know many people that are going to stay here for that. So, you know, there's emergency shelters that are specifically built.
There'll be, you can see it on TV, website. If you sign up for the Alert St. Lucie, you'll get, you know, text alerts or email alerts, depending on which one you choose. We were talking about the Alert St. Lucie earlier. And they will give you the information like evacuate zone, y'all do it ABC, right? Like zone
Correct.
A? Yeah, evacuate zone A. Well, on their webpage, Zone A, you can zoom all the way into the street level and see what streets are in Zone A, which are mostly right by the river. If you're right by the St. Lucie River, is Zone A. Yep. Yeah. As we were telling people earlier, you don't have to go to Georgia or Tennessee. As a matter of fact, if you try to go to Georgia or Tennessee, you will probably end up sitting on the interstate or the turnpike with all the other snowbirds that think they have to go to Georgia or Tennessee to get away from a hurricane. All you need to do is get 10 to 15 miles inland of the coast, because the majority of the time, I think it's like 85% of the time, what kills you in a hurricane is drowning, floods. It's not the wind. And so emergency managers, we always, there's an old thing that we say run from the water, but hide from the wind. So if you're far enough inland that you're just getting the winds, you're not getting a 20-foot storm surge. If you were in here for Mike Lyons' presentation last, there was a 20-foot storm surge that came with Hurricane Dorian on the islands over in Marsh Harbor in the Bahamas. If you're a quarter of a mile from the coast and a 20-foot storm surge comes in, you're going to have a lot of water in your house if it doesn't wash away completely. So run from the water, but hide from the wind. So if it's going to be a wind event and your home is built to, did you say it was just built? Is a new home, brand new home? You're built to the most current Florida building code, and our building code is the best in the country for wind. California's is the best for earthquakes, right? Because they put things so that it has a little bit of give in them. We don't have that, but ours are built for wind down here in Florida. Now, if I were in Kentucky, I would say get out. If hurricane's coming, towards Kentucky, get out, because your home is not built to withstand wind, but it is down here in Florida. If it's been built since, I think Mike said 2001 was when that building code was was updated to the current standard. And that was based off of what happened during Hurricane Andrew. Everybody's heard of Hurricane Andrew. The 30th anniversary is coming up this year in August. That was down in Homestead, just south of Miami, and it leveled everything because it was all a wind event. There wasn't a lot of flooding with that one. It was just wind, and it knocked everything down. And it was because those homes were not built to withstand wind. Now, if it's been built since 2001, which is when they updated it, it's built to withstand more wind. Mobile homes excluded. Someone asked a mobile home question in the last session. Mobile homes excluded. You should always evacuate if you're in a mobile home, especially if it's expected to come to where you are. Now, if you're in Port St. Lucie and it's going to hit Broward County, I don't think you'd have to evacuate here. But if they say evacuate here and you live in a mobile home, evacuate, because they are not built to withstand those kind of winds like a traditional home is.
And can I add one thing to it? You want to make sure you have a plan in place before we get a hurricane. So meaning is, if you're planning to go somewhere else, to evacuate the area, do not do it 2 days before landfall. Like Shane said, you will be stuck on the interstate, and then you will be trying everything to find fuel. I've seen where the interstate has been blocked off and it was a big parking lot. So if you're going to do an evacuation, do it well before everybody else decides to do it last minute. And to answer your question about how to find out, like Shane said, the news media, no matter what channel, local news media you go to, if there's a storm coming close to us, they will be talking about it. They always do.
So thank you all once again for coming. Our next presentation will be at 11:45 with Wptv First Alert Meteorologist James Wieland. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I'm going to introduce to you Wptv First Alert Meteorologist James Wieland.
All right, thank you guys. Sometimes I don't need this because I'm kind of loud, but good to see everybody here. Wow, what a turnout with this. This is crazy. This is so nice to see too, because really, we go through this every single year. We have a lot of new people coming here, and welcome to all the new people here who don't really know what we go through every year. You're in for an eye-opening experience, aren't you? But we're here to tell you kind of what to expect and to keep you safe and maybe keep that tension down a little bit. So once you go through some of this, you're going to be all right. You're going to know what to do, and we'll all be okay. So we're going to go over here. This is a little presentation that I came up with. It usually takes like an hour, so I'm going to compress it into 25 minutes here. But we'll go over some of the science behind what the hurricane forecasting is. I'll let you know what to expect this year for this year and why we kind of expect that. I'll keep the science and math a little bit low. We don't want to use our brains too much today, but we'll keep it low. But just to explain that we're not just the scientists aren't just throwing a dart at the board. These are reasons, these are things we look at, kind of indications happening in the atmosphere that we see, and that this is the reason why we're coming up with some of these forecasts. Some of the top scientists are, and one of them just came out, Dr. Philip Klotzbach of Colorado State. That's the original one, the OG. He's been doing it forever and ever and ever. He took over for Dr. Bill Gray. He was his apprentice. Dr. Phil, really great guy too. I've met and talked with him several times, and he just updated his forecast. I'm pretty staying on par that it's going to be a really busy season, but I'm going to show you the why behind that too. So my name, James Wieland here. I've been here for a little while. Here's a little bit of history behind me. I graduated from Florida State University. Any Noles out there? Go Noles. Nothing, all Gators, aren't you? I run into that a lot, but yeah, I've been in the business 24 years. I started out in Clarksburg, West Virginia was my first station. And when you're a TV meteorologist, you have to start in small little markets and kind of work your way up. But I grew up down here in South Florida, so my goal was to come back to South Florida. And my family's here, my mom, sister, brother are all down here in South Florida, so it was great to get back here 15 years ago. I can't even believe that it's been 15 years since I started at Wptv, and really I started part-time. My buddy called me and said, hey, I'm just the fill-in guy, but I'm leaving. You should call Steve Weigel and see if he needs somebody. So I did, and here we are 15 years later. I do the morning show, but now I just got moved over to the night show. So I'm going to be on the 6:30, 7, 10, and 11 p.m. So if you watch me in the morning on Fox 29 and WPTV, you're going to watch me, have to switch at night to watch me in the p.m. for just about the same amount of hours, but at night instead of in the morning. And really what got me interested in weather is surfing. I grew up down here, and my buddy took me surfing once in Boca. And just like that, it's just something that stays with you. It's something, I love it. This is on Palm Beach on the north end, and I mean, I love it. And what makes waves? The weather makes waves. And that's what I found out, and I started saying, you know what? I was in high school, and I'm like, maybe I can make a career studying the weather so I know when there's waves again enough. All right, so that's what I did there. Here's our team. We've grown to 6 meteorologists. When I first started, I was the extra guy, and really I was only half because I was part-time. So we only had 3.5 people, and now we have 6 people. It has grown tremendously here over the years because WPTV and WFLX knows the commitment we need to make to the people to really keep you guys safe out there. And we've always gotten the best equipment. We've been very fortunate with getting the best equipment out there, the very latest. And in fact, we're getting, in maybe a month or so, another piece of equipment that is really going to be a game changer for us because of the ease of use, but for you guys too. It's going to be the crawl system that you see above or below the screen when you get severe weather, and it's going to be more informative. It's going to be faster. It's going to be better looking. So everything there, they're really investing a lot into us, and they always have. So it's great to have a company like Scripps that really wants to put their money where their mouth is and invest in that. So it's great. So hurricane season, of course, we're already in it. It's July. It runs through November, through all of November. And of course, this is just the climatological. This isn't like you turn a switch on June 1st and you turn it off on November. We've had storms in every single month form. So this is just when most of them form. And June and July are pretty much slow months. We've had a few already, I know, but they haven't really been a whole lot. Now, remember last year, 21 named storms. You could say busy, but was it? Maybe, for some, because 7 hurricanes, if you compare it to the year before, that's half of the hurricanes of the year before that we had last year. Unfortunately, we had 8 storms make landfall, not hurricanes, but named storms make landfall in the U.S. So that's what kind of makes it busy. Remember all the years? I mean, I think we went 10, 11 or so years with no landfalls in Florida at all, and now we're kind of racking it up again. 7 of those storms, though, only lasted 2 days or less. So that's why I say busy in names, yes, but It only lasted, some of them, probably weren't even found back in the day, in the 60s or 70s. All right, so this year, what are we talking about? Now, Colorado State, like I said, leading forecaster for this, and NOAA's kind of the same. They forecast the same, but they just came out with a new update, and it's on par with their old one. It's 20 named storms, 10 of those hurricanes, and 5 of them major hurricanes. Last year, we didn't have any major hurricanes. So 5 major hurricanes when the average is 4. So you can see that's above average for any year. Our averages did go up to 14 named storms, 7 and 3, but this will be an above average season. They noted too that they anticipate above average probability for major hurricanes making landfall along the continental U.S. and the Caribbean. So that kind of is a little eye-opener that you're like, what? That means we need to pay attention to this and be prepared. Now, the reasons behind this here, like I said, we always have reasons. I wish this thing was wireless. Can I take it off here? Well, there's just a little wire. If I just feel like people can hear me better. Like every time I turn my head to look at the screen, you can't hear me. But anyways, the reasons behind these, of course, we track El Nino every year. And El Nino is not present. El Nino is what I broke it. And El Nino is what suppresses activity. So we don't have that. Oh, yay. Sorry. All right, good. Very good. I like to be active and walk around. I'm not somebody who sits still. So with no El Nino, that means nothing's out there. There's no roadblocks, nothing to suppress the activity. So that's check, one for a positive there of more activity. We have warmer than average waters. Well, at the beginning of the season, it was in the subtropics, which is where we are. And then now it's even in the deep tropics, in the main development region. So warmer water is more fuel. It's kind of like pouring gas all everywhere, and you got a bunch of it. So that's the fuel that hurricanes use. And it's also, well, the Gulf of Mexico and near the Bahamas is just crazy warm right now. So that's a lot of fuel there close to home. And also a very robust West African monsoon so far. That's where all the tropical waves come from. When we watch them come off Africa, sometimes there's some years where they're very anemic. There's only a few of them. It's not real active. This year, well, we already know because it started that it's pretty active. So there'll be a lot of waves coming off. Those are the little seeds that are planted when a hurricane forms there as they go across the Atlantic. So those are the things that we're looking at this year. Now, there are things that we look at on a regular basis, too, which I'll go over in a minute. First, these are the names here. Alex, Bonnie, Colin, we already got. So we check mark those off. And, if we go through this entire list, because there's 21 names on it, well, we go to the spillover list. Now, this supplemental list has changed. Now they decided that the Greek alphabet, since we used it for a couple of years, they're like, oof, that's not a good idea. We have people, alpha, gamma, beta, they don't know what's going on. So they decided to make a list. The World Meteorological Organization makes all of this, and they decide on how all of this goes. And they decided, we're just going to make a supplemental list, and we'll crank through the supplemental list every single year. This does not change every year. The other list changes every year. There's 6 lists every 6 years. So this will not change. However, if one of these happen to be a particularly strong and destructive storm, it will get retired just like the original list, and it will get replaced by another name. So that's how they're going to do that. And that's a change over the past couple of years. So here's the Atlantic water temperatures, the anomalies here. So this just means if it's hotter than normal or cooler than normal. And you can see all through them. This is the main development region, and it's all warm, and it's into the Gulf of Mexico too. So again, that's one of the reasons. Now, El Nino is warmer than normal waters, and La Nina is cooler than normal waters in the Pacific. So it's kind of easy to see what we're in right now. This signature, whoop, whoop, way cooler than normal. So we are still solid in a La Nina, which has been going on for a little bit now. So we're solid with that. Now, warmer waters in El Nino, that would be warmer waters off of South and Central America there. that would mean, well, a lot of shear. It doesn't do much for the summer months. In the winter, though, it makes it cooler and wetter. We get more cold fronts, but maybe not stronger cold fronts, and it's just a rainier winter months. Minimal impact on the summer, except for the fact that the tropical aspect of it decreases activity. So El Nino would decrease activity by shear. Just the upper level shear just rips everything apart. And if a storm is trying to grow from the bottom, right? It's trying to grow. You got rising air. It's trying to grow. It's trying to spin. If you have something, just like you, if you're standing up here and somebody's trying to push you over, every time you try to stand up, somebody's pushing you over. Pushing you over. That's what that shear is doing. That shear is pushing the storm over, and it's not allowing it to really get going. So that's why El Niños are really killers for hurricane seasons. Doesn't mean none form, it just means less. And this is a graph on what the predictions are. I'll just fly through this. This means, so the blue line is La Nina, and because it's higher than the rest of them, probably not going anywhere for a little bit. And if anything, this is neutral. So it's not going to be an El Nino. It's not going to be neutral. So another big thing here is the AMO, the Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation. I know that sounds very scientific, but what it basically is we have big swings in hurricane activity, and they last several years. Multi-decadal, that means decades. So this is a decade-long thing, and we're in one of the positive parts of that. It started in 1995. Is when we started the swing of higher amounts of hurricanes. And you can see it here. So remember, 95, Andrew was about 93, so we were kind of on the upward swing. But remember what a slow year Andrew was. We've kind of been on an upward swing. Been pretty down in the 70s, not a whole lot. But remember all the historic ones, 50s, 40s. That was the higher part. 1900s, all of those storms that hit, that was the lower one there, 1901 to 1930, just a couple of big storms. 1800s, you always hear about the storms, way back. That was the higher thing. So that's one of the things that we look in. We're in the more active time of that. That's why one of the reasons why we're seeing more hurricanes every single year. All right, another thing that we look for is that Saharan dust. Remember we saw it at the beginning of the season? It's usually more prevalent in, say, June and July, but it can get all the way over here, all the way through the season. And if not all the way over here, it gets into the deep tropics too, and it's just like dry dust. It's like it'll soak up the moisture like a sponge. So when those tropical waves come out, and they're trying to gather energy, they're trying to soak up some of that ocean fuel, and then you have a sponge every time kind of sucking all the moisture out of it. It inhibits activity. So we track these, and you can track them as they come off the coast. Those big monsoon waves, they got wind with them. They kick up all that dust. They kick up all that Saharan dust way up into the atmosphere, and it ends up making it all the way across. This is a satellite picture. The new GOES is super detailed, but you can see it coming off the coast of Africa, and the trades transport it all the way across. You can see here in the Caribbean, this is what it looks like in the sky. You remember we had this. I'm not a fan of this. I don't like looking up and seeing white sky, but it's when it's just white out and that haze off in the distance. I think this is like Puerto Rico or something when it came over the islands there. So this is a clear day, and then this is when there's a bunch of haze. And again, we had that, I think it was mid-June, maybe early June we had that. So go on to formation. We're in July now, so we're starting to look a little bit farther. June, mainly close to home. That's about it. Now we're looking a little bit farther out towards the islands. Of course, August, September, pretty much anywhere's open. Open game for these things to form and move. October, we start squeezing it down a little bit. We cut off this region because wind's just not favorable anymore in August. We're starting to transition in the fall. And then November, it's just something coming out of the Caribbean from time to time. Our peak is September 10th. That's when the most activity historically has occurred, when there's the best chance to see a hurricane or a tropical storm out in the Atlantic. And we want to caution, though, the Weather Service did a study on this, and they said, well, yeah, but more than 60% of landfalling storms in South Florida occur after that September 10th peak. So just because we get to the peak doesn't mean you let your guard down. The hurricane steering currents here, where are they going? How does it work? Well, we have three different types here. We have a weak, a kind of a middle, and then a strong Bermuda high. A weak one, the storms are going to pretty much curve out to sea well before they get to us. So when it's real weak, you always see them just going out into the Atlantic and staying out there. Now, when it's a little bit stronger, they get a little bit closer. They get steered towards the East Coast, and it just kind of depends. It's like almost like ocean waves. You remember the atmosphere is fluid, so it's going to fluctuate. So that Bermuda high is going to fluctuate back and forth, and it's going to happen while the storm is out there. So that's why predicting it can be a little bit tricky too. And then, of course, if it's super strong, that's when everything goes into the Caribbean and into the Gulf of Mexico. Because that thing, think of this as like a mountain, right? And the hurricane is like a bowling ball, and it's rolling down like a little gutter, and it can't go up over the mountain, right? The bowling ball is just steering just like it's following a river or a little trough. The Saffir-Simpson scale, everybody kind of knows this, category 1, 2, but keep in mind, like, I know, especially people that have been here a while, you're like, oh, category 1, we don't have to do anything. But, I mean, 75 mile per hour winds is a lot, you know? Like, that can cause some damage. A category 1 will produce some power outages. It'll, you know, knock around stuff. If you don't take in your stuff outside, it's going to get blown all around. So a category 2, up to 110 miles per hour, I mean, if you're in the eye wall, I mean, that's some serious damage too. And then, of course, a 3 and a 4 and a 5, which we don't want to ever have, but we were super close, weren't we? Dorian. Oh, my goodness. That was crazy. That, when we were at the station, that thing, the models had that thing coming right into, like, Palm Beach County and the Treasure Coast. I mean, just directly into us again, and that was a monster. And then I remember we were all like, I can't even believe this is going to happen. The next day, just like that, the models changed. They got the new information. The hurricane hunters, that's what the hurricane hunters are out there, to put the data in the models, all the data. So it's what's happening right now. They're getting all that data. They load it into the models. It spits out a solution, and then we can see how it's trending towards with the real data, the more detailed data out there, and how it goes. And then we got lucky with that one, but unfortunately, Grand Bahama did not, and they had to go through that for hours because it stalled there. Some notable storms, of course, Hurricane Irma there. There was Dorian, 185 mile per hour winds just stalled right over Abaco and Grand Bahama, and you can see just the destruction that it caused there. And sure, you could say, you know, our stuff is maybe built a little bit, you know, better than wooden houses, but with winds like that, I mean, there's still going to be like massive destruction and storm surge. Hurricane Harvey, remember that one? That was the rainmaker, right? That's a new kind of benchmark for rain, 60 plus inches of rain. And that, of course, flooded all of northeastern Texas. Andrew, right? This was our benchmark before we had Francis and Gene, everything on the Treasure Coast, and everything started ramping up. Andrew was the benchmark there, and it hit south of Miami, 165 mile per hour winds, Cat 5. It was a very tiny storm, relatively. It was very compact and small, but it was a monster moving on in to South Florida. And you can see back then, there weren't as nice as building codes of what we have now, and we've built up South Florida a lot now with better, stronger hurricane codes, and so not quite tested yet for something like that, and we hope never to. Labor Day storm, 1935, that was a huge one there. It knocked the train off, and then this one too was kind of the benchmark before, like Andrew, Camille, that wiped out that apartment building and Pass Christian, and I think only a couple of people survived there that were having a hurricane party or something like that. But just shows the destruction, especially along the Gulf Coast, when it comes to storm surge. For us here, see, we're lucky. The Atlantic, it gets really deep fast. Even on the Treasure Coast, a little bit less on the Treasure Coast, but it gets deep fast, so you can't pile up that water like in the Gulf where it's just shallow for so long, the shelf, and then it drops on off. So the hurricane can pick up all that water, push all that water up, And where's the water going to go? It's too shallow to go down, so it goes inland. And that's what causes a lot of the destruction. But you don't need a big hurricane to cause damage. This is Tropical Storm Faye in Wellington. And rain, Tropical Storm Isaac, remember that one? We got like 22 inches of rain in parts of the area there. And a couple tornadoes, you know, of course, hurricanes spawn tornadoes in the outer bands. So if we don't have a direct impact, that doesn't mean we see no impact, because always the outer bands have some kind of tornado risk. So the worst part of the storm, when you hear us talk about this, the right part of the storm, but what does that really mean? This right quadrant, it's to the storm direction. So let me turn it to show you this is the way storms move, right? So they're always moving, for the most part, from the east to the west. So it would be the north side of that storm. So if you're in that area there, that's what's going to have the most damage and the most destructive part of the hurricane. It will be the right side of the storm, because the storm is rotating counterclockwise, and you just get more push right there. So that's not a spot you want to be in. A watch and a warning. So a watch, right, in general, right, not just hurricane, but whenever you hear a watch, tornado watch, whatever it is, watch just means the conditions are there. It's possible to happen. It might not, but it's possible. So think of it as maybe like a broader, especially for hurricanes, a broader warning area. Then when you get to a hurricane warning, now we're narrowing it down. So that's 48 hours, 36 hours for a warning. We're narrowing down the time, but we're also narrowing down the area, because we don't want to put people in a hurricane warning if they're not going to see hurricane winds and worry you needlessly. So we've been able to narrow that down over the years now with better technology, better forecasting, better modeling, so we can narrow this down a whole lot more. So when you hear the warning, that means, I mean, you got to do everything. In fact, you probably should be complete by then, but if you can get your house together and put the shutters up and do all that, a hurricane warning, if you haven't done that, you need to do it for sure. Probably a watch if you need more time. If you need more time, then do it when a watch comes out. You know, and I just want to mention this too, because we get this from everywhere. Like all of the hurricanes, tornadoes, all of that, they're local, right? So you want to listen to the local people, your local emergency management, the local weather people, the local National Weather Service office. I know we have many times I was watching CNN and they said it was total destruction for everybody, you're all going to die. Well, that's what the national news does. We are separate from the national news. We are not CNN. We are not Fox News. We are not MSNBC. Even if we share a similar moniker, we're not. We're local. We're with you. I'm here with you guys right now. I live here. We all live here. And we all are part of this community. They're somewhere else, and they're just doing whatever that we have to unravel later. But we just had this over the years, right? So we had to put this in there. You always got to have a family plan. Discuss this, right? Do it ahead of time. That way you don't have to think about it, and more time, more worry. Really, that's what you're doing, is the worry, right? You want to say, okay, we have a hurricane watch. I know exactly what I'm doing. Sure, I'm a little worried. You should be, but like, at least I'm not worried about what to do. What do I do now? What do I do this? Go over this already. Have your plan, because it's all personal to us, right? You or you or you, we're all going to have different plans because we all have different needs. So you want to look at what you need to do and make that plan and pin it down. And don't think that's not going to change. You're always going to learn something from the last hurricane. We're always going to learn, okay, I should have did this, I should have did that. So then write that down after a hurricane and say, this is what I need to do. I need to add this to my plan. Water, you need a bunch of it, of course, for 3 to 7 days. Food, you need food and a way to cook it, like a grill or something, so keep that in mind, or just, you know, and be sure to have like a non-electrical can opener if you do canned food, obviously. Pillows, clothing, hygiene items, cell phones, right? The good thing with cell phones, it's good to have, I have a little solar charger, but you have your car too, so there's that. But eventually, if this keeps going on and on, you're going to run out of gas, and then you won't be able to do that. And then, you know, if you do have generators and stuff, just keep in mind the generator safety. You can't put it in the garage, even with the garage door up. That's not what you're supposed to do. In fact, it's not even supposed to be over an overhang, which I know makes things really, really difficult. But That's what the safety is for that. Carbon monoxide is no joke. So it can get in your house through anywhere. So the little soffits underneath your roof, if you have it underneath, it can go right in there. So you got to stay safe with the generators too. Maybe buy a lock if you're worried about somebody running away with it, and lock it to a tree or something like that. I always thought put an umbrella over it if you're worried about like it raining, like a long, like your pool umbrella is really long, and then you can put it in the ground next to it or something like that. Here's our Weather Pilot 5. It's outside. Hey, check it out. It's really cool. As we do the weather from this as a TV in the back, and thanks to James Griffel over there, our promotions guy, bringing it today. Look at the old school weather radio. This is one. I have this one actually. It's a crank. So you need batteries, but you don't need batteries because you can crank it. Anybody still have this one? We were giving these away at one point. They're awesome though. Like you don't need, you can sit and crank it. So of course nowadays this is new school. That was old school. New school. Download our apps. We have everything on here from the radar to news, everything. The best thing, especially nowadays, streaming. We have everything streaming on here. There's so many channels that we can stream on our app and on our phone. If we're ever doing 24/7 and we're going all the way through, it's going to be on here. We're going to stream it all the time, and we stream the local news all the time anyways. So this is a really nice resource just to have it. Get on there. If you don't like all the pop-ups coming in, you can shut those off, but as long as you have this on here for you to say, hey, I want to watch what they're doing right now, and you can go through and watch it. So there you go. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
All right, so welcome back, everybody. This is the Emergency Managers Panel. So what you're getting ready to see is, or talk with, is personnel from City of Port St. Lucie, St. Lucie County, and Martin County. Over 200 years of experience collectively between all of us. We're going to share knowledge, discussion on managing a storm, and provide before, during, and after tips to residents. So I want to introduce the panel to you first. Billy Weinshank. Billy, raise your hand. Billy is the Emergency Management Division Director for the City of Port St. Lucie Office of Emergency Management. Karen Kozak. Karen is the Emergency Management Safety Planner for the St. Lucie County Department of Public Safety, Division of Emergency Management. Sally Waite. Sally is the Martin County Emergency Management Director. And Sanji Hawkins, who is Martin County Emergency Management Deputy Director followed by me, Shane Ratliff. I'm the Emergency Operations CRS Manager for the City of Port St. Lucie Office of Emergency Management. And then finally, our moderator for this panel is Mason Kozak. Mason, he is the Emergency Management Project Assistant for the City of Port St. Lucie Office of Emergency Management. And just so y'all know, he's the one that organized this entire thing. So give Mason a round of applause for that. So Mason's going to take over from here, and I'm going to sit on the panel. Go ahead, Mason.
All right, so as Shane said, we have a group of emergency managers here. I'm going to be the moderator leading the questions for this panel. Some of the questions for this panel will be directed to everybody. Some of them will be directed specifically to members of this panel. If you are one of the people that submitted your questions before this event via email, we've tried to incorporate it, or we've answered you directly, hopefully, to answer your questions about hurricane safety or emergency management. If anyone in the audience does have questions at the end, we are more than happy to answer it, or if we are not the right people to answer it, we'll direct you to the right people for this event. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. So this first one is directed to everybody. It is, emergency management is still a new field. What is emergency management to those that may not be aware of the profession? Who wants to go ahead and take that question?
So what we do, I think it's easy to kind of define what we do instead of what emergency management is. What we do is when something big happens, it exhausts local capabilities. So that's like law enforcement, fire rescue. Can you all hear me? Law enforcement, thank you. Law enforcement, fire rescue, emergency medical, whatever. Once all of our local resources get overwhelmed, emergency managers get involved, and we kind of step in and try and coordinate between the agencies. If the agencies don't have enough human resources or equipment, we'll ask other agencies to send their resources and equipment in. So we kind of like, when something really big happens, like a hurricane, like COVID, we step in and we work with other response agencies to try and get you, our residents, what they need to make it through okay.
Thank you, Billy. Does anybody else want to give a try on answering that? May have a different idea. Shane, I see you going.
Yeah, just wanted to say, contrary to popular belief, emergency management doesn't just deal with hurricanes. So those of you who are not from Florida, you had emergency managers in those states too. I did this in Kentucky, so I never dealt with a hurricane when I was there. We were too busy dealing with tornadoes and floods. So, but yes, emergency management is all around the country in every state, and it's not just focused on hurricanes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in some of the other questions towards that as we go through.
Mason, I would like to add, if you remember nothing else about emergency management, what we teach is the 3 C's: communication, collaboration, coordination. So you want to know what those are. Communication, that's exactly what we're doing right now. Part of that communication is education, helping you prepare for whatever the hazard may be. And it's just like Shane said, don't think always about hurricanes, because there's other events that's going on. The collaboration piece there, we have to interact with our community, our private partners, our non-government agencies, the Red Cross, Salvation Army. The private partners have to come into this whole piece. And that coordination piece, we can't make it happen unless we have the whole community involved. So remember the 3 C's.
And what I'll add to that is, in particular, when you think about responding to any emergency or disaster, it starts with preparedness. So this isn't just something that occurs just during a part of the year or during hurricane season. It's a year-round effort. It takes training, it takes planning, it takes working with our partner agencies year-round. And that is the most important thing, is that truly is a whole community effort, as Sanji was saying, and even as Billy had mentioned as well, is that it takes all of us working together, but it is a year-round effort.
All right. So the second question, this is going to be directed to Billy, Sally, and Sanji. You 3 are all directors for an emergency management agency, but Sally and Sanji, you're with a county agency, and Billy, you're with the city. What are the similar and different roles that the city and county fulfill? I know we kind of hinted on the different plays, but just wanted y'all to give an answer to that.
Well, according to Florida statute, the counties have the authority to issue evacuations and provide sheltering to their residents. The cities, we have to have the city's cooperation to make sure that the city residents are doing what they're supposed to do as well. We have the ability to request resources from the state that the cities need, for their residents too. And do you have anything, Sanji, that you want else to add?
I can add on to that from a city's perspective. One of the meteorologists, I think it was James Wieland and Mike Lyons, our first two meteorologists to speak today, they both stated that all emergencies are local, and they are, right? So locally in Port St. Lucie, we're here for the citizens of Port St. Lucie, for our residents, and we'll do everything we can. We'll assist the county with evacuations, we'll assist with shelter operations, and all the other things, clearing the roads, working with Fema and the state to open up shelters, to open up disaster recovery centers, like where you would go to get additional assistance after the disaster, food, water, etc. We'll work and coordinate all of that on a local level. When we get overwhelmed, we'll go to the county. When the county gets overwhelmed, it goes to the state, and God forbid the state gets overwhelmed, it's going to go up to the Fed. But either way, we have like this chain starting at the local level, at the city level, moving up to the county, onto the state, where we're all working together to try and get you, our residents, everything you need to make it through okay. And just kind of going back, what Sanji said, a lot of that starts like right now, right? Educating you about what do you need, what can you do to prepare, things like that. And we all collaborate and work together. In St. Lucie, we have a monthly or every other month, the city emergency management and county emergency management, as well as city of Fort Pierce. We all get together and talk about worst case scenario, what are we going to do to help everybody. So it's a team effort.
Absolutely.
And just a question here, how would your agencies notify citizens of any disasters or emergencies happening in your jurisdiction?
For Martin County, we use Alert Martin. We also use a social media platform. We have, Twitter, Facebook, all the social media toys that are out there. But, most importantly, I think we use the media to help us, with all of our local media channels to get the word out. But to residents in particular, we really use our Alert Martin system. You can sign up for Alert Martin.
Well, we have Alert St. Lucie. We talked about it's the same. They're all generated out of the state of Florida's Division of Emergency Management through a system called Everbridge. Too much information, but Alert St. Lucie, Alert Martin, Alert Palm Beach, whatever, all of it rolls down through the same system. So you have to subscribe to this though. It's stlucieco.gov.
.gov/alert.
/alert, and then you register and you sign up for the alerts you'd like to get.
And Karen, can they go out to y'all's booth in the art gallery for that information on Alert St. Lucie?
Yes, so you can see stop by the St. Lucie County booth, and there is that information there as well. If you go to the St. Lucie County website under search, you can put in Alert St. Lucie there, and it'll bring you to the link to where you can click on it and go and register as well.
Thank you.
So aside from that, we also coordinate with our communications department here in Port St. Lucie. We push all that information out through social media, through our website as well. So, and we work with local media too, like the meteorologists that were here. We're talking and working together behind the scenes to give you like the same picture, right? You don't want to turn on channel 12 and hear one thing and channel 10 and hear something else. So we're all working together to give you like a coordinated message.
Thank you. And this is to the...
There was a question.
Oh, where was the question?
So I get the alerts on my phone, on the house phone, but I think there's some other things, and after a while there's no cell phone, there's no phone, there's no nothing. So then what?
The question for those of you that could not hear that is, what if when my power goes out and I don't have access to my phone, I can't get reception, how do I get that information? Does anybody want to take a shot at answering that? I know there's some good answers for that. Karen? Sorry, Sanjay.
No, it's going to be your weather radio. So do you have a weather radio, Denoa? Yes, ma'am, Denoa. So again, part of the preparedness piece, when we spoke of that earlier there, is to help you prepare. So yes, you may lose electricity and stuff of that nature, but you still want to be informed. I still have a landline phone. I know people think that's right now, why do you still have one? If nothing else works, you can plug it into that wall and you will continue to get some type of information. That weather radio, that's going to be another option for you. So we can't just depend on one thing. You're going to have some redundancy in your preparedness as well. So again, now text messages generally will continue to come through, even on your smartphone. A text message will continue to come through. So again, think about redundancy. If you don't have a landline, make sure you get your radio. You can go to Walmart or any places like that. NOAA, N-O-A-A, weather radio, alerts continually come through that. Okay.
Thank you. That was a really good question.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, satellite phones as well. I don't know about text, but satellite phones are our backup. I mean, they're expensive. It could be about $100 a minute. But when everything fails, we have satellite phones to get in touch with state, Fed, etc.
All right, we're going to jump ahead here. I'm going to move on to Shane and Karen. You are both in charge of your agency's CRS program. What are those programs for the people, the residents? Because that's usually when you say CRS, nobody understands that. Can you just give a brief explanation of what it is and what you're doing?
Okay, I'll start on that one. CRS is the community rating system, which doesn't mean anything to most people, but it's part of the National Flood Insurance Program. So any of you that have flood insurance policies, it was underwritten by the National Flood Insurance Program. That's the only way to get flood insurance in the United States, is through the National Flood Insurance Program, because private insurers will not underwrite a flood policy. Why don't they underwrite a flood policy? Because it happens too often. Flooding is the biggest hazard we face. It's not hurricanes, even though we're sitting in the middle of, I guess you'd call it Hurricane Alley instead of Tornado Alley. We're sitting around the middle of Hurricane Alley. Hurricanes is not the biggest threat we face. It's floods. The hurricane, our building code is so good in Florida that most likely, as long as your home was built after, I think, what's his name, Mike Lyons was saying this morning, 2001, the most current version of the Florida building code. As long as it was built after them, you're probably not going to have a wind problem. But you sure going to have a water problem if that hurricane dumps 42 inches of water in 24 hours like one just did last year. You're going to have a water problem. You're not going to have a wind problem. You're going to be, up to your neck in water. So the CRS program, what it is government participates in the program, which unlocks the ability for its residents to buy flood insurance. If we weren't part of the CRS program, you couldn't even buy it. You would not be able to buy flood insurance at all. So by us participating, you get the opportunity to buy flood insurance, and by the activities that we do to try to mitigate against floods, it brings us into tiers, or what they call classes. Everybody starts at a class 10 when they enter the program, which is the lowest, and 1 would be the highest. As you come into the program and you do activities and they re-verify that you're doing the things you say that you're doing to mitigate flooding in your jurisdiction, then you move down the ladder, up the ladder, however you want to look at it, because they do it backwards from 10 to 1 instead of 1 to 10. So it's very similar to the fire insurance class rating. If you don't know how that works, it's the same company, ISO, that grades and does the scoring and decides what class you're going to be. And so fire insurance has the same thing. You can be a class 5 ISO rating or a class 1 ISO rating for your fire services. So the lower the number, the bigger the discount on your flood insurance policy. So remember, just by us participating, you can buy flood insurance. Each class that we move, if you live in the special flood hazard area, which is a flood zone, any of the flood zones, every class is 5% discount off all the policies that are purchased in that area. So the city, Port St. Lucie, just re-verified in 2021, and we got our results in 2022 because it takes them a year to go over all this stuff. We're talking reams and reams of paper to prove all the things that we're doing. And so we're going to be, as of April, because they set the date, April 1st, 2023, the city of Port St. Lucie will move from a Class 8, which is what we were before, to a Class 5. So that's going to be an extra 15% discount on flood insurance policies above the 10% you were already getting. So 25% off a flood insurance policy in the special flood hazard area, and then everybody else outside of that area gets 10% off. So that's what the CRS program does is it encourages us and encourages you to mitigate against flooding so that you get a better rate on flood insurance. Karen, would you like to add anything to that?
So something that I would really like to highlight with what Shane is talking about is that this is a program. So with the program, he had mentioned these activities, and the more of these activities that you can say we do or we implement within our community, that is obviously what increases the insurance discount that we get. So a couple of those activities is community outreach, community education. So we're getting out into the community and we're heightening flood awareness. What can we do to help prevent a flood? Or if your home is damaged from a flood, what can you do? So again, educating the community. Open space preservation. So if we have areas within our county or our community that floods regularly, what can we do to maybe help preserve that space? So maybe nobody can build there, or there isn't any construction. So again, that's going to help decrease the impact. So if someone built there, it would flood. So if we can go in and preserve that space and say, we're not going to build there, then again, we're protecting you as a homeowner, and we're protecting us as a community as well. Resources to the community. You can go on to Martin County's website, City of Port St. Lucie's website, St. Lucie County's website, flood protection information. So there's resources available for you there. So if you have particular questions about possibly how that affects you, or flooding affects you or your neighborhood, that's a resource for you as well. And again, something else that Shane had mentioned is there's building codes. Are we staying up to date with the state of Florida building codes, particularly for our area? So that's just a couple of those activities that we do participate in.
Thank y'all both. I know, Karen, you kind of hinted toward this, but if somebody was interested to see if they were in a flood zone, where would they go on the county's website for that?
Okay, so St. Lucie County, stlucieco.gov is our website, and then you can go under public safety or search flood protection information. That will take you to our webpage, and there's a link on there that you can click on to find out about what flood zone you live in. Also, there's a site called riskfactor.com. It is another validated source as well, to where if you want to put in your address, it'll give you the information for your flood zone.
And Shane, we do have an interactive map for our flood zones. How do you get to that?
All of our flood stuff we put on one page, which that's one of those activities we were talking about.
Yes.
That's under activity 352B, is to have one website that has all the links and everything you need to know about flooding. From that one site, you can get to wherever it needs to be. So ours is www.cityofpsl.com, which is the city's page /flood. So cityofpsl.com/flood, you go there and you can go all the way from local all the way up to Fema and find out anything you want to know about flooding or how to mitigate against it in your area. And there's also, it says know your zone is one of the things. Know if you're in a flood zone. You click on that, put in your address, it'll show you what flood zone, if any, that you were in.
Thank y'all. This is a question for the entire panel here. What kind of education training do you need to be for emergency management? I don't know who wants to take a jab at that one first.
I will. There's a college curriculum to take. It's under public. It's a public management degree with a specialization in emergency management. There's some emergency managers that started with no college, just through years and years of experience. I mean, I think in most fields, experience is probably the best teacher, but to get in, especially nowadays, you usually need some kind of college degree. So I would say a bachelor's degree in public administration with a specialization in emergency management. Indian River has a great program that does that, and there's so much training out there for emergency managers. Some of it's free right on the FEMA website. So if it's something that interests you or your children or your grandchildren, please, research it, go to FEMA.gov, look at emergency management classes and learn.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I've got just a couple more. Some agencies, depending on where you are or how many people they have, a lot of it has to do with how many positions they have to fill, will ask for some kind of certification, such as an FPEM, which is a Florida Professional Emergency Manager, which is given by the Florida Emergency Preparedness Association, or a CEM, which is an internationally recognized certified emergency manager by a company or a nonprofit called IEM. And the International Association of Emergency Managers. So depending on what position you're looking at, like if you wanted to be a director somewhere, you probably need to have something like that because that shows that you have all these years of experience. Because with having all that experience, you probably have somehow lucked your way into getting one of those certifications as well. But then FEMA requires that all EM staff and anybody that's working on in disaster management, and these anybody can take if you just want to learn. It's called the FEMA Independent Study Program. So if you go to Google and Google FEMA Independent Study, the classes are 100, 200, 700, and 800. Those 4 classes at a minimum everybody has to have. And then depending on whether you're in leadership or whether you're leading groups of people and stuff, you may have to take 2200. And then there's in-person classes which you won't be able to take unless you are in emergency management. But you can take. They've got 900 classes, I think, now. I mean, there's 900 independent study classes. So if you're bored and you want to learn more about how emergency managers think and work, go there and just knock yourself out. Because I know I've had people come up to me at conferences who weren't in emergency management that said, I've done 72 FEMA classes. I'm like, good for you. I have not, but good for you.
Does anybody else want to add on to that?
I will.
Okay.
So most of y'all are probably pretty familiar with the large wildfires that happen out in Florida and on the west coast of the United States, right? So when you think about those large fires, that's bringing in a lot of different agencies that has to work together. Sometimes these are agencies that are maybe from within the same state, could be neighboring states, could be even from the other side of the country. The most important thing is that when all these different agencies that come together that maybe have never even seen each other or practiced together or trained together, we're going to have to be able to respond together in a very organized fashion. So there's a lot of these classes that we take that is put on at a federal level that helps us with training, communicating, working with our partner organizations, and there's all these other trainings and classes that emergency managers are expected to have to be able to work together. So there's another layer to that. So there are these trainings that we do take called Incident Command System classes, and those are these classes that we do take so all of us up here can work together to help respond to serve our community.
Thank you. Another question I have for the group here is, we've talked about hurricanes, flooding. What are some other threats to this community, disaster related, that y'all would think about that kind of keeps you up at night?
Well, I would say just after, just infrastructure in general, we've seen, what happened in Fort Lauderdale with the high-rise structure failure. We actually had a structure issue with the Roosevelt Bridge. Those things are what we consider a hazard in our community. And we talked about hurricanes, and hurricanes to me that keeps me up at night because I worry that people are complacent because we haven't really had a severe storm to the Treasure Coast in a very long time. But seeing all of you out here, wanting to listen and wanting to be prepared makes me feel a little bit better about that. But there's terrorism, there's active shooters. These are all things that can become disasters. So I guess we all stay up a lot at night.
For me, being from an area where hurricanes weren't prevalent, tornadoes is what keeps me up at night. Because in the tornado belt where I'm from, that's all they talk about. Just like all they talk about down here is hurricanes, but people don't talk about tornadoes down here, and Florida gets as many tornadoes as Kansas. But they're usually EF0s or EF1s. They're really low grade, not very strong tornadoes. But when one of these hurricanes comes in, hurricanes usually have tornadoes, they're wraparound tornadoes within them, and you could easily have an EF3 or EF4. And I lived through, emergency management lived through a huge tornado outbreak where it took out entire cities. And I mean, you get no warning. Like we are so lucky in Florida that you get 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 days warning that a hurricane's coming. You get 35 seconds warning that the tornado's coming. You don't get to evacuate. You don't get to run away from it. It's going to hit you. So that keeps me up at night, is having the way the weather keeps changing. I'm afraid we're going to start seeing crazy stuff like big tornadoes in Florida.
I'll add one thing to that. One thing that really, aside from if I get my wife angry, that's very scary. But one thing that keeps me up at night is unexpected floods. Like Hurricane Harvey is a good example. That was like huge flooding that I don't think any city's infrastructure would be, or counties or whoever's infrastructure would be able to keep up with. And we have a saying as emergency managers, run from the water but hide from the wind. The water is the most deadly thing, right? If you look at like the statistics of who died from hurricanes and how they died, most of it is from flood. I'd say about 85, 90%. So if we got some kind of an event where we're getting like 20, 30 inches of water dumped on us per day, per 24 hours, it would be very, very difficult for all of us. We would deal with it, we'd keep you safe, but it's a scary scenario. And as Shane was saying, things are getting a little crazy in the weather world, so that kind of thing really worries me.
Before we open up to final questions, I just do want to ask, we've already given some preparedness tips. Does anybody else want to add any preparedness tips for what people should do before the storm, before an event? Billy?
I do, kind of in line with Sanjay's 3 C's. There's three things that we encourage everybody to have. One is to make a plan, know what you're going to do, right? Where you're going to go if you need to go. With that comes know your zone. If you live in a flood zone, odds are when we get a storm, even a Category 1, you may have to evacuate. Your first step is knowing, do you live in a flood zone? So get a plan, know your zone, and lastly, make a kit. Have supplies in your house for 7 days for each family member, right? So that's 7 gallons of water. My favorite is Dinty Moore beef stew in a can. 7 meals, 7 times 3 meals per family member, right? Non-perishable food, Dinty Moore beef stew, tuna fish, etc. Things like that. All of that are on our websites without me taking up the whole forum's time with all the details of that. It's on our website. I'm sure it's on Martin and St. Lucie County's website. So please, those 3 things, know your zone, build a kit, have a plan. That's instrumental.
Do y'all want to add on to that? I see Sally.
Well, I'd just like to say, there's the stand form to make sure you're keeping up to what's happening with the storm, but also to, volunteer your time, help your neighbors. You might have elderly neighbors that might need assistance with shutters, or just maybe having them at your house. You might know people in manufactured homes. The Treasure Coast has many manufactured homes and communities. Really just helping each other, out is really the key to keeping the whole community strong.
And Karen, I saw got something?
So as we're talking about planning, you're thinking about your entire family. That does include pets. Do you have a plan for your pets? Do you have the food for your pets as well? For St. Lucie County, the general population shelter that is pet friendly is Westwood High School. So again, that's just something to kind of keep in mind as well, is your entire family, and that is just something I wanted to mention.
And Sanji?
Yeah, so on top of that with the shelters, understand where your shelters are. I don't like to say, make sure that shelter's your last resort. Part of your plan should be finding somewhere to go that's safe. Remember, if you're going to a shelter, you don't have a private room. 9 out of 10 chances you are in a gymnasium with about 200 other people. You have a small space, 20 by 20, right? No.
20 square feet.
20 square feet. So that's about the size of a cot. They will give you a cot. If you think about if anybody ever went camping, that's what you're going to be sleeping on. So right now, think about it. So if you're in a modular home, and if you have family and friends that has a brick home, see if you can stay with them. If your pets are your concern, call the Humane Society now to see if they will board your pet. We do have service animals. Do you know what the service animals are? There's only 2 that we will allow in the shelter. Do anybody know what they are?
Lizards.
No.
Gila monsters.
Small ponies.
A dog and a small pony. So when we have individuals that's coming to these shelters with boa constrictors, little dragons, iguanas, and all of those, they may be emotional support animals. Don't see how boa constrictor would be, but anyway, that's just my take on that piece right there. But yes, that you have to remember. So part of your plan is, where will I go? Because I really don't want to be in a shelter. But if that's your last resort, please shelter. My senior people, one more.
Sorry.
If you're living in Florida, most of our seniors, they live in Florida, please let your adult children know where you are. Because many times that phone call we get is, can you tell me where my parents are? Remember to let them know if you're evacuating, where you're going. If you're going to a local shelter, share that information with them because they are worried about you just as much as you're worried about your neighbor. So that's my only thing with being that preparedness.
My tip is very short, sweet, and to the point. Was given to me by my great uncle, God rest his soul, many, many years ago when I was probably 8 or 9. And go figure, I'm the flood guy now, so this makes even more sense. Hot's on the left, cold's on the right, and water does not run uphill. So get to high ground.
Thank y'all for your time. Does anybody have any questions for this panel before we wrap it up? I know we ran a little over time, but I think it was some good information that was given out. Going once, going twice? Yes. Where do you get the preparedness? So like preparedness information, how to stay. I would recommend, just to kind of answer this question, go to the city's website, cdpsl.com/hurricane. There's, before the storm, there's an option to look on it, and you can build a kit, have a plan. It talks about all the plans you can build. And I'm sure Martin County and St. Lucie, y'all both on your websites have information about having a plan and stuff like that.
If you remember ready.gov, that's FEMA's website, it gives you everything, even a checklist to help you prepare. If you can't remember any of our websites, remember that website.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
Is this considered a shelter?
This is not considered a shelter here at the event center, no. It's usually, the shelters are through the St. Lucie County Public Schools. You can go to both of our county and city's website. You can look at the shelters here in the county.
Oh, and mentioning shelters, especially special needs, you should register in your county if you need a special needs shelter or you know someone that needs a special needs shelter. And that's also on each of our websites.
Yes.
So the other thing to keep in mind when we do talk about shelters, Mason mentioned it, it's usually the schools. When the media does start announcing that they are going to open up shelters, please listen to which shelters they are opening. Because just because they say we're opening shelters, it doesn't mean they're opening all of them throughout the entire county. So please just be aware of which shelters are being opened at that time.
All right. Any other questions, anybody? Amazing.
Thank
All right, thank y'all for all coming out.
Thank you.
So now I'm here to introduce to you WPEC Channel 12 Storm Track Chief Meteorologist Vetus Reed and Channel 12 Storm Track Meteorologist, Zach Covey.
All right. Well, good afternoon. How are you all doing today? Yeah. Have you guys got full bags of swag? All that good stuff? Yeah, let's see it. How y'all feeling on this side of the room this morning? I don't hear you. Hey, okay, how about this side of the room? How y'all feeling? Oh, wait up. Somebody over here feels better than this side. Can you get a little bit louder than that? How y'all feeling? All right, is everybody ready for hurricane season? Oh, I thought I was going to hear crickets. Cricket, cricket, cricket. Oh, and everybody wants to be ready for hurricane season because, you know, one of the biggest things for me, I'm kind of a newbie down here. And I'm going to tell you, I talked to a lot of people at the booth who walked by and said, hey, where are you from? And I'm like, well, I'm originally from Michigan. Anybody from Michigan? And you know the glove. Okay, all right. I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan. And the worst kind of storms we would get was lake effect snow. And it was a lot of lake effect snow. So I'm talking about where we have 6 to 10 inches, and the next day we're still going to school. Okay, so it's like put on your boots, go to school. So you know it's a different world up there. But then I lived in Baltimore for 18 years and did weather there, and had to deal with the I-95 corridor. Anybody from the Mid-Atlantic? Somebody from Mid-Atlantic, D.C., Maryland, Virginia? Okay, well it's kind of tricky there, but a lot of influence down here from New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, and I talked to a lot of folks down here, and I've lived here 1 year, 2 years. So what Zach's going to talk about is going to be very important for you to listen, because the most important part about hurricane or any type of storm, it could be a tornado, could be flooding, could be lightning, could be wind damage, any type of weather-related phenomena, it's about your knowledge, what you know, how to react, what you need to do. And if you are prepared, that's what's the most important part. So preparation is key to anything. So you aren't left, I'm not sure what to do. Oh my God, there's a tropical storm watch. Oh, there's a tropical storm warning. What's the difference between the watch and warning? We're in the cone of possibility, what does that cone mean? Is it ice cream cone? Is it extra toppings on the cone? No, what does it mean? It means that, you know, what we do in our job is to explain that to make it a lot easier for you to know what to do, how to react, how to take action, and keep your family safe. That's the most important thing for us. So we care for all of you. So when we do our jobs every day, it could be a heavy thunderstorm, dropping a lot of rain, and the sun's out on the beach, but you hear a rumble of thunder. We're telling you going to be a chance of showers and thunderstorms. We want you to listen because we care about you. We care about your families. We worry about your stuff, a house, a car, but we care more about you. And we want to make sure you're safe and you know how to interact or operate if there is that type of situation, such as a hurricane or a tropical storm. So that's what we do in our jobs, and we love you guys. That is the big key. We love you guys, you know? Yeah, you can clap for that, because we do. We love you, and we appreciate that you guys watch us, or whoever you're watching, whoever you choose. It's important for you to know that we're all doing the same thing. We're all working together to try to make it a safer place for your community and for your household and for your families. So that's what we're here for. So anyway, once again, I'm very happy to be this chief meteorologist for this department. We have some great talent at CBS 12. Zach Covey, this guy right here, this is like a walking scientist. I love this guy. He knows a lot of stuff, and let me tell you, he's teaching me a lot of stuff all the time. I'm the old dog in the department, as well as I'll throw Michael Lamberg under the bus too. Us, both of us, but we're the old dogs in the department. But Zach is a great guy. Also, Lauren and Jennifer. So you can tune in at different hours, whatever works with your schedule, and get the latest and greatest in our information. So what he has is some information. I'll turn it over to him about some things about our hurricane season, what we've seen, what we can expect potentially across parts of our area, kind of pinpointing some ideas and concepts. And then we'll leave it open for the end for some questions, if you have, to ask us some questions that might be stirring in your brain. So thank you very much for your kindness. I turn it over to the Z-Man. It's all up to you, man.
Thank you, Vetus. All right, I'm going to set my phone here because I realize people probably have things they want to do at the end of this. So I'll try and stay on track. How is everyone today? Good, good, good. So my name is Zach. You don't have to put the meteorologist title. It's all good. But basically, I am a hurricane specialist. I went to Florida State University, and I studied meteorology there for 4 years with a specialization in tropical meteorology. So I am a tropical hurricane specialist. That is my go-to department. If you ask me about snow in the winter, I'm going to defer you back to Vitas. He can talk about the snow. That's not going to be me. So when we talk about hurricane stuff, you can always trust in me to kind of detail that stuff out for you in a way that you want to understand. The bottom line is, unfortunately, it is likely to be an above normal season. This is coming from NOAA. They're predicting a 65% chance of an above normal season, about a 25% chance of a near normal season, and only a 10% chance here in green of a below normal season. Now, what that basically means is we are highly likely to see a lot more storms than we normally would, but that does not mean that we know where these storms are going to go. So it is very, very important, very vital that you follow along all hurricane season long about where we're watching these storms eventually grow, develop, and move. Now, the next update from NOAA is actually going to come out in August, so we're about 1 month out. It'll be early August from the Climate Prediction Center, and from all accounts that I've heard from sources over there, they are likely to stay with an above normal season. We're already running above normal to this point. Now, you might hear NOAA, obviously, puts out their forecast. Colorado State also puts out their forecast, and I've highlighted it here along with tons of other people that put out hurricane forecasts. Colorado State actually just updated their forecast a couple days ago. You guys might have heard it. You guys might not have. The bottom line is their update was no update. They're keeping it the same. 20 named storms, 10 hurricanes, 5 of those hurricanes becoming major Category 3 or higher. If we take all of the companies that put out their hurricane forecasts, we're averaging it out to 19 named storms. Of those 19 storms, 8 projected hurricanes, and 4 of those would be major. That would classify as an above average season. So there's a range of reasons why this above average season could exist. One, obviously above average sea surface temperatures. If you guys have been to the Atlantic waters just off of our coastline, it is hot. This morning in Apalachicola, Florida, which is just south of Tallahassee, go Knowles, waters there reach 90.6 degrees. 90.6, and it is only early July, so that is starting to be a concern for the northern Gulf as well. So there are little hot spots that we're already starting to observe these above average sea surface temperatures. And finally, the current ENSO pattern continues to suggest that we are not going to see El Nino. How many of you have heard of El Nino, La Nina? Okay, a lot of hands. How many of you understand what that means? Okay, some people do, some people don't. We'll touch on ENSO in just a second. I want to show you the sea surface temperatures. This was taken this morning when I was at work. Look at the main development region, above average. Look at how dark red the northern Gulf is, much above average. Now we are starting to see some below average temperatures south of the Azores there. The Azores are right here. Sometimes when we see this cold pool move south, it can inject into the MDR and lower this. We'll need to see. July is going to be the month that really talks about whether or not we can cool off the main development region. And if it does, that could reduce the hurricane forecast. But again, there's a lot of kind of wait and see. This month is going to be that big month where we actually watch that. This is an animated GIF from my buddy Eric Webb, fantastic tropical meteorologist out there. And what we're looking at here in blue is reduced wind shear. And all of these white dots indicate significant values of note of reduced wind shear. Notice as we go throughout the months of August, September, October, you have a big swath of reduced wind shear in this area, which indicates that that area will be favorable for major hurricane development. So we will be watching that as well. Finally, let's talk about the hurricane season to date, because we've already had 3 named storms. We have potential tropical cyclone 1. You guys may remember this as Alex. This is the storm that canceled this very event in June. So it moved overhead, created a lot of rainfall. We actually had a lot of rainfall from Alex. On June 2nd, it was declared potential tropical cyclone 1, produced very heavy rain, a few strong wind gusts in South Florida. We had measurable gusts of 50 up to 60 miles per hour in Hobe Sound, believe it or not. And then on June 5th, after the storm was past Florida, it finally developed a low-level center, which we were able to classify as Tropical Storm Alex. It did peak with winds of 70 miles per hour as it passed the island of Bermuda. Look at some of these rain totals, though. So again, when we talk about hurricanes, you think of Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5. But remember, tropical depressions, weak tropical storms, they may not have the winds, but they can have some rain. 13 inches in Miami. By the way, that fell in just a day and a half. In a day and a half. Everglades picked up about 10.3. Pembroke Pines about 8.8. Boca picked up 7.8. Delray 3.2. Even along the Treasure Coast, we picked up anywhere from 5.3 in Vero Beach. Over to Sebastian, 4.6. Here in Port St. Lucie, they lucked out a bit. You guys had a bit of a dry slot, so 2.2. It wasn't as impactful here in St. Lucie County as some models had suggested. But there were locations where major flash flooding happened. So when we go into hurricane season, just because we say it's a tropical depression or a weak tropical storm doesn't mean it's not going to be impactful. This Alex, Tropical Storm Alex, is proof that it can still produce a lot of flash flooding. Miami had major issues with that. Then we had Tropical Storm Bonnie. This was actually very recent. It was a wave that came off very early off of Africa, worked its way through the MDR, and finally became potential Tropical Cyclone 2 on June 2nd. Or, excuse me, June 27th. The storm finally developed a low-level center. It took forever to do, but it was finally given the name Bonnie on July 1st, and it made landfall in Costa Rica on July 2nd. It had 50-mile-per-hour winds and a central pressure of 997. So this storm is interesting because it actually moved from the Atlantic over Central America, and that's the Pacific Basin. And believe it or not, that storm intensified in the Pacific Basin. It is only the second time we have ever had on record a storm go from the Atlantic, cross the Central American continent, and move into the Pacific Basin with its low-level center intact. Which means even though the Pacific Basin has a B storm already, they also got another B storm. It maintained the name Bonnie, and in fact, it strengthened to a major Category 3 hurricane as it raced offshore. It has now fallen apart. Finally, we had Colin. You guys may be saying, I don't remember Colin. Yeah, Colin was a storm that developed and fell apart in about 24 hours. It quickly developed near South Carolina on July 2nd. The National Hurricane Center called it Colin. Most models really just failed to pick this storm up, but it did produce some rain along the coastal Carolinas. So we've now had 3 named storms. Year to date, if we look at where we are now, in 2020, we had 6 named storms at this point. 2021, we had 5. So we are well below average from where we've been the past 2 seasons, but when we compare that to our 30-year average, we're actually above where we should be. Historically, we should only have 1 named storm at this point. So yeah, it's a quieter season than 2020 and 2021 so far, but we are still running above average, and that, again, lends credibility to the idea of an above-average season. So what's still to come? When's the next big uptick? If you've been watching me or Vitas or Jen or Lauren or Michael, you guys have heard us say no tropical development in the next 5 days. And to be completely frank, probably no tropical development in the next 2 weeks. We're actually in something called the suppressed phase of the MJO. This is a very fancy term, but basically there are 2 areas, one of rising air in the globe and one of sinking air in the globe. And that rising air, this enhanced phase, is actually over Asia right now and the far western continent of Australia. The MJO typically takes about 30 to 60 days to move across the globe. And when it does move across the globe and eventually into areas of Africa and the Atlantic, it can really intensify the development for hurricanes. Right now we're in that suppressed phase, which kind of keeps out the risk of tropical development. But once that enhanced phase moves back in, which looks to be the 3rd or 4th week of July into the first 2 weeks of August, we could be talking about more tropical development somewhere in the Atlantic Basin. So put it on your calendar, that 3rd, 4th week of July. Wouldn't be surprised to maybe see one of those areas that the Hurricane Center says, we're going to start watching this wave. In fact, you can actually see it. This is something you guys would never see on air, but something we utilize behind the scenes. All tropical meteorologists utilize this. This green is that enhanced phase, that rising air. And notice how it sits over the African continent here. That's going to generate all of those African waves, which will then roll offshore into the Atlantic. So seeing all of this green over this period of July 26th through August 16th indicates that we are likely to see a very prolonged period from late July into at least the middle of August of tracking some tropical waves, of which some of those waves could develop into tropical systems. Of course, heading into August, 25% of all named storms happen in the month of August, and 29% of all major hurricanes happen in the month of August. You move into the month of September, nearly half of all major hurricanes happen during that month of September. So as we work our way towards the peak of hurricane season, which is September 10th, we need to keep in mind that these storm numbers are likely to increase through August and September. Historically for Florida, we actually see the most named storms threaten the state of Florida in the month of October. Even though the peak of hurricane season is September 10th, historically, Florida has seen more storms in the month of October. So when you start hearing people say, hey, you're on the other side of the peak, it's all good news from here, keep in mind October, historically, is something we need to watch here in Florida. So Colorado State obviously puts out their seasonal forecast. And 3 years ago, they started to really get hyper-local. What is it going to be in your county? Now, I want to stress, these numbers are still very, very new for Colorado State. However, there is some skill to it. In fact, over the past 3 years, year over year over year, their percentage odds of getting this correct have been high. They highlighted all of the counties of Louisiana during the record 2020 and early 2021 seasons for the potential of being the hot spots of those seasons. And sure enough, we saw what happened in Louisiana. Sure enough, that was correct. So historically, Indian River and St. Lucie County average about a 36 to 37% chance of seeing a named system, tropical storm, hurricane, major hurricane, of making landfall. This year, Colorado State is indicating that we are likely to have about a 1 in 2 shot in both of these counties to have at least one named storm make landfall in these counties. If we head farther south, those odds actually increase towards Palm Beach. And in fact, Palm Beach is the 3rd or 4th highest county in the country rated for a named storm landfall this year. So again, take this as you will. This is still a very new percentage thing put out by Colorado State, but the meteorologist over there, headed up by Philip Klotzbach, a fantastic tropical meteorologist, he's been doing this for decades now, it shows some skill, and this is something that we're obviously going to be tracking over the next several years. Now, if you look at the hurricane return period, which is the average years between when a county will see a hurricane make landfall, along our areas, we tend to see a hurricane make landfall every 7 to 8 years. To put that in perspective, the last hurricane to make landfall in our area was 2004. 2004. Yeah, Francis. So this is obviously a long hurricane drought that we have experienced now. Hopefully that drought can continue, but again, the 1 year that we say it's not going to happen, it would. So we need to make sure we're constantly being prepared. Same thing, average years between major hurricane landfalls, we average a major hurricane of Cat 3, 4, or 5 strength between every 16 and 19 years from Palm Beach County north through the Treasure Coast. So we talked about ENSO real quick at the very start, and I said we'll really dive into it here. What is ENSO? It's called the El Nino Southern Oscillation. Basically a big fancy word for saying how warm or cold are the waters off of the equatorial Pacific. So it is this big red box. See all that blue? That indicates well below average sea surface temperatures. And when that happens, that indicates that we are moving into a La Nina period. Now, we have been in a La Nina period for 2 years. Historically, it is exceptionally rare to have 3 La Nina periods back to back to back. In fact, dating back in the records, the last time we actually had this, and I looked it up this morning, I believe it was in the early 60s. That was the last time we had a back-to-back-to-back La Nina pattern. Well, that's happening again. It looks like we will be in a La Nina pattern. So what does that mean? Well, in an El Nino pattern, this whole area would be warm. And that would actually lend to enhanced wind shear in the Atlantic. And again, storms don't like enhanced wind shear. It tears them up. So that would lower your risk of seeing tropical storm development in the Atlantic. But unfortunately, we're in a La Nina period. That cooler air actually intensifies wind shear in the eastern Pacific and reduces that wind shear in the Atlantic. And a reduction in wind shear, especially trade winds, can also help to warm temperatures up. They can kind of work hand in hand. So obviously, this is a big pattern that we're going to be watching. The fact that La Nina could be happening for a third year in a row will be substantial and another big driving factor into that potential of an above-average season. In fact, if we look at the ENSO states from the Climate Prediction Center for the months of August, September, and October, which would be peak hurricane season, they're forecasting a 55% chance of La Nina occurring, neutral conditions about a 45% chance, and yeah, only a 5% chance of El Nino. So clearly, El Nino will not be happening. The question is, will we be in more of a neutral, a typical pattern, or could this be a La Nina pattern which could set up an above-average season yet again? Historically, if we do move into a La Nina pattern, we tend to average 4 major hurricanes per year during the months of during the years of El Nino. In fact, look at 2020. We had 6 major hurricanes in 2020, and that was a La Nina year. If you move back to 2017, which was the prior La Nina year, that was also 6 major hurricanes. So you can easily see major hurricanes are more popular in these blue bar, these La Nina periods. So again, if we are likely to be in La Nina during peak season, expect more of those category 3, 4, or 5 storms. Again, it doesn't tell you where they're going, but it is something we need to be aware of. So what can you do now? Create a hurricane kit. Know your evacuation routes. Perform those insurance checkups and consider flood insurance. Remember, flood insurance is not something that comes default with your homeowner's insurance. You have to do that separately. Also, remember with insurance checkups, if you've done something new to your house or your renter's insurance or what have you, and a storm is threatening, a lot of those insurance companies are going to cut it off. They're going to say it's too late to do what you want to do to fix your policy. We're done. Good luck. So do that now. Get it done now. So hopefully you won't need it, but if so, you feel more prepared when a storm is heading. By the way, know your evacuation routes. FloridaDisaster.org is our local state website for knowing your zone. You can go to that website and actually type in your address, and it'll come up with a very big map, and it'll tell you what zone you're in and the different evacuation routes that you can take to get out. Remember, we're here in the peninsula. There's only 2 ways to go, north, south. If you evacuate east-west, it really doesn't matter. At that point, storms are so big here and the peninsula is so small, you're still going to feel impacts. So you just need to know, are you going north? Are you going south? What are your routes? What are your options? But FloridaDisaster.org, a fantastic website for that. There's my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram, my email. Jot them down. Use them. I'm very active during the tropics season. A lot of people always have questions. You can shoot them over to me. I would love to answer them. I'm very active during the hurricane season in answering all of your questions. That is what I am here for. That is my whole job of being a hurricane specialist. So if you guys have any questions, there you go. I hope you liked the presentation. Thanks for sticking around. I think it's almost 2, so yeah.
All right, once again, thank you all for your time. And if you have any questions, please ask a question. We'll try to answer them for you.
Any questions? Yes. So the question for those that didn't hear is, we always hear European and American models. Is there one model that's more accurate than the other? Historically, the European has been more accurate. Now, with that being said, NOAA and the National Weather Service have put billions of dollars in improving the American model. And in fact, last year, we did a major upgrade to it. And the American model was significantly better than the European all of last season. All of last season. So far this year, the American has slightly underperformed to the European, but a lot of these systems have been weak, have been sheared, have been short-lived. So it's still the jury's still kind of out on how it's going to perform long-term for the remainder of the season once we get into those bigger storms, those more developed storms. Could the American go back to what it was last year? But last year, by far, the European slacked, even though historically it is the better one. The bottom line is you're always going to have 2 stories. The truth is going to likely lie in the middle of those two roads, and that's our job as meteorologists, is to try and show you the different models and then deduce it down to, okay, here's the real story. It's likely going to be more of this type of a route. So you can pay attention to all those models you want. Always pay attention to the cone from the Hurricane Center. They do a very good job at making sure that it balances out those bias. Any other questions? Yes. So the question was, what's the impact of Saharan dust? And that's a big thing right now. We actually have a big Saharan dust plume outbreak right now over the Atlantic, which is another driving factor of why the next 2 weeks are likely to be quiet. Saharan dust dries out the atmosphere. Remember, hurricanes are big moisture engines. They utilize moisture in the atmosphere from the surface all the way up 50,000 feet above our heads. So if you're adding in dust, if you're sucking all of that moisture out, these storms are literally choking themselves to death, and they cannot thrive in that environment. So anytime we have Saharan dust outbreaks, you're going to likely lower down that hurricane count. However, Saharan dust outbreaks are more likely in June and July. They become much less likely August onward because the winds of the African easterly jet tend to decrease, and we tend to get more storms over Africa by that point, so you're moistening up the atmosphere. So this is likely the last major Saharan dust outbreak that we're experiencing right now for the season. We'll have little ones here and there, but this is likely the last major Saharan dust plume of the season. Yep. Thank you so much for coming out, by the way. I appreciate it. And thanks so much for coming out, guys. Have a great one.
Thank you all for coming. See you again next year.